best of the different businesses.
So it's not a meeting.
Sometimes they do
it's-
best
Okay.
local official.
More of an
I
event.
I knew it was something like that. So. All right, are we ready to roll?
We do.
Welcome to tonight's meeting. Our first thing up is Westminster Economic Development Authority Study Session for July 1st, 2024. We welcome to the Westminster Economic Development Authority Study Session for July 1st, 2024. We thank you for coming and would like to remind all in attendance that our meetings are subject to the rules of the quorum that are posted on the inside of the chamber doors. These rules are in effect while our meetings are in session, as well as during breaks and transitions between meetings. We want to be sure all feel welcome and remind attendees there's an expectation that this meeting shall not be disrupted and that threats and intimidation are prohibited. No attendees shall engage in audible expressions of support or opposition for any speaker. Signs and placards are prohibited, and all attendees shall remain seated in the seats provided, not in the aisles nor in the shall the doorways be blocked.
All right, thanks, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors. Tonight's presentation is an annual presentation that the city has done for the last several years, and it's on just an update on the downtown and what's going on. And so I'd like Community Services Director Lindsay Kimball to start us out. So Lindsay, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, City Manager Freitag. Good evening, WIDA board members. I'm Lindsay Kimball, your Community Services Director. With me tonight to give this overview is Jody Andrews, your Deputy City Manager, Heather Cronenberg, Real Estate Development and Sustainability Manager. We also have Mona Chori here, our new Focus Area Administrator. And we have Bob Bayerhoff, our Finance Manager, right there. We also have our team of consultants that we'd like to introduce to you. We have Bill Jenkins, who provides us with real estate consultancy services, Mr. John Mullins, who provides us with financial guidance, and Mr. Malcolm Murray, who is our counsel for special districts and other items related to downtown. Thank you all for being here. And as you know, this is a team effort. This is our third annual update to you about downtown Westminster development. And as you know, 15 years ago, the city took a very bold step. It saw a dying mall, and it engaged proactively to revitalize the site and to not allow a blight to grow in the heart of our city. So that was a bold, very outgoing step that the city took. And we have leveraged that into quite a bit of success that we're going to tell you about tonight. We're very proud of our progress we've made over the past 6 years. When we first saw this development break ground with the first new project. And it's so exciting to think where we're going to be in 20 years from now at the end of this project's development lifetime and life cycle. So before I hand it over to Heather, I just wanted to ask that if you could hold your questions till the end of the presentation, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, thank you. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the vision of downtown. It's a high-quality mixed-use development. It's a regional and community-wide destination. The project includes a mix of uses such as retail, office, hotel, civic, and residential uses, and a bustling, active environment. Here's a bit of information about what it could look like at build-out. Of course, these are just projections, but this takes you back to some of the original planning information that we started with. Wanted to talk a bit about our approach here, as Lindsay mentioned. This development is market-driven. We're a patient developer. The city can pace development to match the market. So flexibility is one of our guiding principles. We have to maintain flexibility to work with the right partners that are vision aligned. So that's very important to this project. We have upfronted the public investment with land and improvements, and of course this is a very valuable asset that we now retain. We have gone through 2 major market recessions plus a pandemic, so we wanted to just go through a few of the market factors to be aware of that influence and impact not only this project, but obviously projects across the board. We've got the interest rates that are there. They're between 8 to 10% is what we're seeing. It's very different, as Lindsay said, from 6 years ago where money was cheap and there was a huge pent-up demand for projects. We've got high construction cost of materials and labor, a shortage of construction workers. And retail's evolving to match consumer shifts, but it's certainly dependent on growth in the resident and visitor population. Office market is still in flux, of course. We've got a little over 22% office vacancy rate in the Denver metro area, but it's showing signs of adapting, and that's what we're watching and trying to understand and position ourselves. Sorry. No, it's okay. Okay, thank you. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. So this one is a map of the downtown, kind of block by block, that you've probably seen before. And it shows, of course, a variety of uses planned for through a period of time as a phased approach. So it basically goes from the west to the east, the A blocks to the D blocks, with a planned full build-out around 2038, especially in those office block corridors. And this shows, of course, this is a work in progress. The blacked out areas are the buildings that have been constructed, and the rest show the variety of uses, such as rental, for sale, residential, hotel, office, and cultural uses. Lindsay?
Great. And this slide is a visual demonstration of the revenue categories and also of our expenditures and capital investments that we have made. These are high-level, large categories that we have grouped these into. And we won't go through and give you an eye test for this entire graph, but I think the important thing to note is with $140 million spent on those expenditures and investments, those expenditures have been spent on assets as well. So when you think about the land acquisition cost of $30 million, almost 10 years ago now, 11 years ago, that land has value, and that value has continued to increase as you have made those other public investments in infrastructure, roads, other parks, other aspects of the downtown that make it highly desirable. So always know that you have an asset here. The parking garage that you built is an asset. The land that you still own is a great asset, and it continues to grow in value. So that's an important aspect to look at. It's not a complete picture. That would be more of a balance sheet picture, but I want to share that with you because we did make expenditures, but we also gained a lot of assets in the process. Additionally, those assets and our investment are what we're leveraging now to drive that future revenue and the future growth. So right now, we have realized almost $71 million in revenues, so about half of what we've spent. But as we are going to see with our next slide, looking forward to the next 20 years of the project's life cycle, if you could, we do see those expenditures becoming more diminished in relativity to the revenues. So now we have $453 million in total revenues by that 2045 date that we've always projected to, and expenses of about $289 million. So in those revenues, we stop at 2045 because that's really our development time frame. That's when the last project is what we call stabilizing, normalizing, and is fully leased. As that continues into the future, those revenues will continue to grow, of course, and that's would therefore be in perpetuity. Those revenues of sales tax revenue, the property tax revenue, and other benefits to the city will continue on. And this is another graphical representation of those revenue projections, so you can see how the model works in terms of how we needed to front load the project with those private investments to drive the out years of private revenue coming in, the public sector investments in the early terms, and then driving that private sector investment in the out years. And you can see that represented in this graph. There is, you will notice a drop off in 2039 and 2038. That is when the URA sunsets, which means we won't be realizing that sort of darker green color as much from property taxes. But that's meant, again, to drive the private investment and to repay ourselves for that early investment early on. That's what the URA was put in place to do, to pay the city back for those initial investments. Next slide, please. And this is also a slide that you're probably familiar with. We have shown this to council in all of our updates. it's that break-even point. It's always moved, with time, with refining the model. Of course, the further you get out in time, the greater the margin of error that you have to account for. So this has actually gotten to a sooner break-even point of 2031 versus last year when we came to you, and it was 2033. So that's a good news story. But since we've been doing this project and creating this graph and presenting it to you, it's been fluctuating between that 2030, 2035 timeframe. So we're still right in that sweet spot. And again, just to graphically show you the GID and URA revenues, the GID is something that you will see there in the green line and also in the red line. So that's a general improvement district. Those are mills, 35 mills levied on all property. It's something that property owners consent to allow for amenities and services, capital improvements above and beyond what a city normally would provide. So that was built in place there to live on in perpetuity, to support the downtown, and its expectations of having a slightly higher standard of service that the property owners are willing to tax themselves for. So that's what that red line represents, dashed, it goes into the future. And again, as I mentioned on the previous slide, you see that URA or TIF revenue, it's going to plateau in 2038, the last year of collection, of assessment, and the last year of collection is 2039. So of course that's going to drop off and disappear, leaving in its place that GID to maintain the ongoing operations, the money needed for that ongoing operation, so it's paying for itself. And again, we front-loaded with the public sector investment to drive the out years of private sector investments, and that URA was established to pay us back for that initial investment. So we will be whole. Again, that break-even point of about 2030 to 2035. Right now, the model is showing us 2031. Next slide. Okay.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. So just to dig in a little bit more on the market analysis and conditions around office, retail, and residential. So office, again, changing nature of space utilization. We've got the high impact of the interest rates and construction cost. The delta really between the rental rates and the construction cost, it makes it to where unfortunately it just doesn't pencil out right now. Lenders are also requiring developers to raise extensive capital to fill their equity requirements. So those are just things that we're continuing to watch in this sector to understand what's going on and what's happening. However, we're positioning ourselves, and as mentioned before, really the most likely user is a potential end user that we're targeting and trying to find. It's that shift that we're looking for to a Class A+ tenant that's really going to be attracted to the top of the line amenities that we can provide with new construction in this market. So we're watching it, we're establishing those relationships with key partners and trying to align ourselves to be ready. We're a patient owner, as mentioned, though, so we're able to do that, which is a great place to be in this market. For the retail and restaurant and grocer, so obviously it was a setback that Marzik's left, but there's still a need for a grocer, and we're doing an ongoing search for that very specific specialty partner that we feel that can bring what we need there and partner with us on the site. There's also strong demand for retail and restaurant uses. We are looking at right-sizing our retail, really understanding what amount can be supported and is appropriate downtown. We also found some really interesting demographic data that we'll show here in a few slides that shows some lower than average household income information that we thought would be helpful to bring to your attention as something that folks are looking at from the outside. So we're just trying to do a 360 look at everything that's going on and make sure that we're up to speed on what's happening in the market there. And then, of course, with rental residential, we've got the high interest rates and construction costs. It's challenging to go over 5 stories because of the cost of steel. We are doing a rental market analysis to understand the market constraints and the costs and the delta. So again, just continuing to use this time to understand where we're at in the market. So this was the information I mentioned. We're working with our outside consultant to dig deeper into kind of the stock data that prospective retail tenants pull. And downtown, of course, is in an opportunity zone. If you compare the average household incomes through a 5-mile radius with other regional shopping centers, we come in fairly low. Well, if you look closer and you look at the number of households with an income of over 100,000 in a 5-mile radius, we come in much higher. So this is just an example of things that we're looking at and trying to understand what are other people seeing when they're looking at us as a prospective user. And we've got to work a little harder to overcome this information to get the right information out to folks and tell the story that may not be readily available just from off-the-shelf information. So we're continuing to refine our message and partner with the broker community to understand and get this information out. And we know this location benefits from drive time users as well. Significant pull from higher income areas. That's always been a benefit even when the mall was here as well. So here's just a little information on new developments that we've got right now, and some of these will certainly be familiar to you. We're making, as Lindsay said, substantial public investments that create community gathering places, major investments in walkability and community building. Of course, Center Park is our huge prime example. Started moving dirt a few weeks ago, and that should be substantially complete in the fall of 2025. So very excited about that. It's getting a lot of interest. We're getting calls and excitement that we're hearing from all over the place about this project. We've got the temporary dog park as well that we're moving forward with, grading and putting in gravel for a sidewalk, and that should be complete by August. And of course, I think there's a lot of excitement about that one as well, and the overwhelming need to provide something like that in our downtown. We're also hoping to find a partner to provide refreshments, a concessionaire type relationship that has been successful in a lot of other types of communities, and it's a big draw as well to bring people to these locations. And then the Woonerf that was recently approved by council was started, and it's going to be complete in October. We've got our for sale condos and townhomes that are going in as we speak on the townhome side, and that's of course responding to the desire to have more ownership residential. And just a little bit about some of the things that we're focused on and looking into the future. We've got the urban grocer, as we mentioned, that we're still looking for that specialty partner. We've also had a great deal of interest in the active adult type of development on this site, which is exciting. We think it fills a need. And then, of course, you've also got this, the population of residents that would be there during the daytime to help support the retail on that side. And then lastly, we've got the food hall, which we're very excited to announce that our partner, which is Mr. Henry Lee, who owns Bonchons and H Mart, and Alley T, is going to be running the food hall. He submitted for a building permit last Friday. So we're very excited that is moving forward. We'll continue to be working with them and hand in hand in this process.
And this is breaking news. I'm sorry, you're doing a wonderful job, but you heard it here first. This is our first announcement at this meeting.
Yeah.
I wanted to let you know. We're very proud.
So we're excited. So those were kind of the updates, Lindsay, and anything else?
Great.
Questions?
We're
Yeah.
happy to answer any questions that you have, WIDA board members.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you for this update. I have questions kind of on multiple slides, but I don't remember the numbers. So I'll just go in order of what I have. The little temporary dog park, I was just curious how much of C6 that is going to be, because dog parks, they don't tend to go away once you put them in there. And I don't think it's a bad thing to have something like that there, but it is land that we'd potentially want to utilize later. So
Absolutely. And I think, we're looking at the idea of potentially putting it in East Park at some point in the
Yeah.
future, right? So we're looking at hopefully starting to design East Park soon and really understand what that could look like and the timing to be able to make that move.
Yeah, and it seems that every one resident has 2 dogs in our downtown.
yeah.
Like all of Colorado, right? It's very popular. And a little bit of the method behind our madness of putting up this temporary dog park now is because of the timing with Center Park. So the 3-acre block that was vacant, just a field, was the de facto dog park for our downtown residents. So we knew that we had to provide an outlet for that, and so that was driving the construction of this temporary dog park. We're hopeful, we believe in interim solutions, definitely, and if, with the concessionaire there as well, we think it'll also be a benefit for everyone in Westminster. Could come there and have a beverage, hang out with your friends, let the dogs run around. So it was more of a release valve for the demand that we knew we were going to have, regardless of if we did one or not. There's still the dogs, and they need a place to run around downtown. And as Heather said, we are incorporating into the East Park concept, having a permanent dog park. So we would imagine we would just shift over there, get that open, close this down, allow it for development.
I like how it will be an activator too, and I've definitely heard from people. They're excited about the park, but they're like, where do I take my dog? So had a couple of questions on the graphs with the with the revenue projections. One more, oh wait, one, keep going. Where'd it go? That. Okay, let's start here. I was just curious, with the blue development review and other types of fees, it looks like it's definitely petering off by the end. Is that just assuming we're making, I would just assume that there's more projects still being built though? We don't have-
We actually are, the model we're working with right now has the last developments being built, breaking ground in 2040, 2039-ish, and then the 2045 is allowing us that time for construction and then stabilization of the property, so full lease out or full rent out, build out, selling of the property. So that's why we had placed that in the 2039 column.
Okay, that makes sense. And then was curious for, if you can go forward to the next, that one. Can you explain just a little bit more you have the green GID current and then the red GID future, kind of why one's going a lot flatter than the other?
Yeah, sure. So we do have a baseline amount in there from the TIF, and that baseline amount will continue to slightly grow. So we have, before we even started the downtown project, we locked in that base, and we locked in the certified amount for the GID. So that little bit will still continue to bump up. But then as we see with the GID, we're trying to show there the increments above what was at that base point when we certified.
Okay. So that's the red line is as development is coming in, and the
Yes.
35 mils.
Correct. And the flat lines are if nothing changed
Okay.
from today.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And then just a couple of questions around office and retail market dynamics. The one, I'm kind of curious. I know office is not very exciting right now. But in terms of medical office or campuses or other types of uses, is there a market for that, or any type of medical, beyond medical office, like hospital, or I don't know if we want that, but yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. The only office that we have seen or heard of being developed has that, it's build to suit for that anchor tenant. And we actually, we have a confidential prospect that fits that mold right now. It's not something that's ready to come forward yet. I would say it's very much in the early stage of conversations. Have a long lead time. But it would be somebody who is looking to either pick up and move a headquarters operation or a dedicated office complex out of somewhere else and moving it here. Maybe I would say a company, a corporation that would be a little more large enough to be slightly immune to those market forces that we're dealing with right now. Certainly no one's really building any spec without having, that anchor tenant or the 100% tenant that's going to lease that space and having them locked in. So they're few and far between, but I think the good news is that we have at least one that we're able to pursue right now. I don't know if I'd put a percentage success on it right now, but at least we're in the running.
I'm just wondering if there's some smaller scale opportunities with maybe a medical office, smaller medical office building that might go on like People don't know this. A1, I should know that. On just thinking of where some smaller scale buildings might, could be sort of wedged in and make an impact, be kind of multiple stories, but start to fill out some of the spaces and or some of the infill places that we have in front of the Alamo or JCPenney's. And I'm thinking of the only thing right now that I see having any energy right now, just like throw a bunch of dentists into a building or something. But just a thought, if there's some sort of incremental progress that we aren't thinking everything has to be a huge tenant, but how can we be creative with some smaller moves that do kind of move the needle a little bit? So that's one question or just suggestion. And then the other question I have around retail demographics. Curious to know if do we have any, I know our incomes aren't that high, but are we kind of getting an increase in college degrees in the area? Because I know that helps with attracting grocers. And
It is, and it's shifting younger significantly. I think it's the average age downtown right now is 30 versus 39. So it's shifting younger, and there's more college degrees and higher education that's coming into if you just look at the resident population in downtown.
Is that helpful at all in terms of who we have
It is.
downtown?
It's just a much smaller comparative amount. But absolutely, I think it's a trend. And that's another thing that we're happy to point out to perspective.
That would be interesting too, to be able to kind of, with the story that is going to the prospective retailers. Why do we always have a gross moth in here? There, if you can show the increase, like with the trending of the area. Okay, and I'm also just wondering about, we have Costco going, and I think that's a really active Costco. Does that help with any of the storytelling? Has it gotten better, worse? Any of the retail around the area?
It's a good driver.
It's certainly a driver, and when we're telling that story to potential retailers and others, the mall, the fact that the mall was there, that proved the viability of that site. And you can't get more visible than right on 36 and Sheridan and 92nd and 88th. And, so the site's proven as a retail site already. It was just the form and concept of malls died. So that we were the casualty of that. So I think we'd like to tell that story, and certainly the Costco is doing amazing from what we hear from them. So we use that as an example, certainly. And I think, what Heather, when she was showing those standard out-of-the-box retail metrics, that's what we, that's where the hard work comes in. You got to put in some elbow grease to really get them to look beyond their off-the-shelf models that they type in, a radius and saying, well, look at it like this. This is a very unique situation. So it takes, salesmanship to explain why this is different, how it's trending, to your point about the demographics, trending younger, higher income, higher education levels.
Okay. Because I guess we have H Mart, we have the Walmart with food, and then we have Costco with food. I don't know if there's any way to isolate those types of sales and just kind of show the health or density of that.
That's a good idea.
Sorry.
No,
Thank you.
there's the need.
Okay, the last question I had was just about just housing opportunities and just of where we are with looking at that mix of incomes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're looking at, a variety of things in this next phase to help offset or help hit those goals, including potentially affordable senior project. That will go towards that as well. So probably on the small side, but something that we're looking at. And then any new mixed use, of course, is what you did before, of having it be a requirement as a percentage of that mixed use. So I'm not sure where we are exactly on the percentage right now, but of course the goals are 15 to 20%. At this point, we've got the 10% on the buildings that are currently down there, plus Eaton Street, plus the potential affordable senior project.
I think we were trying to hit 20% originally, so would be good to
Which we're tracking.
hit that, be closer to that. Yeah, that's good to just maintain some elements of it as we continue to grow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Counselor Ireland?
She hit most of my points, but, so our model is a lot of commercial on the bottom and residential on top, and the Uplands told us that was not the market-driven thing we needed anymore, so that's a big concern, especially when we have only 22% of our commercial occupied. So I'm glad to see you're thinking outside the box, and I think we all need to think outside the box on that. So, yeah, so that's just a concern because it's not what the market wants anymore, so.
Yes, we have, that's an excellent point. So part of our strategy and the fact that we own the property, we're the city, we don't have to worry about making quick money or turning these sites around quickly and flipping them and all this. We have the luxury of being able to be patient. We still have 20 years. I think, in the past 10, we've been through 2 recessions and a pandemic, and who knows, what else is on the horizon. But that's just it. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball for the future, but we do have some time on our side. We own the property. We know this is a turbulent time. It's a cycle for the real estate, certainly for office, and also the pandemic caused, a lot of people to reevaluate how they work, where they work, when they work, all of that. We're still waiting for all that to settle, that dust. We are looking at different things. We are thinking about cultural. Last year, I don't think that was even on our radar. It wasn't on the chart. We're thinking about how can a cultural driver help us to drive demand for some retailers instead of relying exclusively on office for daytime population. Really courting several serious senior housing developers to allow for daytime population and stability in the development, both affordable senior up to mid to luxury senior style homes. We also are looking at potential collegiate partners, maybe a campus or a school of, anything, arts and science, maybe the School of Engineering, School of Medicine, for example, could be and have a new home here. It's certainly attractive for commuters because of our transit and that the RTD station right through this Sheridan underpass. So I think we are getting creative. We are looking at different options, but still, trying to keep that, we've still got 20 years to go, and probably most of us probably won't still be here working. But we hope that we've continued to lay a good, solid, smart foundation and allow there to be options for the future.
So I've talked about parking a lot because I've talked to
Yes.
tenants down there.
Yes.
So have you heard feedback about free parking?
We have in fact, Mona has very close contact with the Business Association down there. She's our liaison for them. We have tried to explain it, and we actually have a presentation later tonight where we're going to talk specifically about downtown parking. But it's always that balance. Any downtown where I've worked and had charge of development in those areas, we always have, it always bubbles up. Why can't all the parking in front of my business be free? And the problem is whenever you have that mix of residents, and here in our downtown, we literally have the residents above the retail. If I said, I can just park right below my window for free for 15 days and not have to move my car, okay, then I don't have to pay the $65 to $100 at a cost to have a parking space in those developments downtown. So that's the current price right now for just an average parking space, not reserved. It's $65 to $100. Garages are more. Some of them have that option for people, but it's balancing how long is somebody going to park in front of that business, because we want to encourage turnover of the spaces, which is why we have them paid. And we do have a lot of spaces that are free for 4 hours, and the garage is free for 4 hours. It's just a best practice of most planning organizations, economic development organizations, to say, a strategy for a downtown with mixed uses, you want to be able to keep that turnover going so that a resident isn't parked there for 8 to 12 hours, even though they know they shouldn't be. It still happens, and then that becomes a challenge of like ticketing and constantly telling people to move or having used boots on people's cars, and it just becomes a problem the other way.
Down a similar line of thinking as the other folks here around questions around the space and the retail space, especially for office space. I'm wondering, I haven't seen this before, but is there a way that we can cater to folks that do work from home in offering, the Sweet Bloom down there is packed every time I go, which is great. But for folks who want to be outside of their house, can we have a larger coffee place or I don't know what it looks like, and even if folks paid by the hour to be there or for laptop stations. I know that there's similar options, like Staples has like you can rent out a space for a month and work, but I feel like somewhere in the middle, there's something that's a little bit more amenable, like a coffee / something to get folks out of their home. And then along with the many brainstormings, I'm sure you have enough on your plate, but I'm just trying to think of what would get people like my age out over there. And health and wellness, I think, is a big factor. If there's places to exercise, work out, drink coffee, and drink smoothies, then we'll be there. Yeah. So just thoughts. And then I think this time last year, we were talking about a library.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for those comments. I want to say we do have Metabolic, which is a gym in our downtown, and Superfruit Republic for your smoothie. And we're hoping to start small-scale neighborhood activities. And one of those that we've kind of been brainstorming about is a yoga, sunrise yoga, sunset yoga. A lot of groups do that, and it's very popular. So thank you. Yes, thank you for validating that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely
I think that would be great. But we also have been talking with our colleagues in Parks, Recs, and Libraries, and talking about that potential partnership. It's all very preliminary. We are blue skying right now. But how awesome would it be to have a library downtown? So now that's that cultural aspect. It draws people in. It gets a benefit to the neighborhood surrounding there. But also, if we were able to partner and have it be that third space by finding a concessionaire to also run maybe coffee. Maybe it's the same folks who operate Sweet Bloom, and they just need to go down a block and run the concessionary at the library. And then that be a third place or a community gathering space, because absolutely, every time, I don't even book meetings anymore at Sweet Bloom, unfortunately, because it's always booked. You're not going to get a table unless you get there at 7 a.m. Because people are working, and it's very, very popular, and we want to work with them to continue to be successful, and maybe they want to expand. But we also think that would be a really cool idea to have that library, so it's a public space, it's open, there's people working, and you've kind of got that activity, and then there'd be a cafe sort of area off to the side where you could get that coffee and have a place to sit and work.
That's brilliant. I like that a lot. And that also, this is slightly down a different path, but it's been on my mind. I know that our libraries offer some services with the city, but it's been on my mind to have a more centralized location, and I love this because it's near our town hall, right? It's all sort of central, that offers more services for non-English speakers, for maybe navigating to DMV, I've just seen a lot of ask in the community. And again, I happen to have a first-hand need because my roommate is a Ukrainian refugee, but still I know that there's a lot of folks from Venezuela who need, jobs, where to go for your DMV, where to go for all sorts of stuff. And so I think we have some of those navigation help at our libraries, but it'd be really great to expand on that. It's just been something that I've been thinking a lot about. Anyway, timeline-wise, do we know, for example, when the condos or the townhouses will be for sale?
Yeah, so we've been told that they'll break ground on the condos this fall. So we're hoping that those can move forward here in a short order. And then the current townhomes, what's the due date of those?
They're taking reservations now.
Taking reservations now for
Ones
the
under
new condos.
construction.
Exactly. So they're moving forward in a significant pace, and we're hoping to continue to partner to bring more of those downtown.
That's great. And then, do we have any planned items that are gonna be opening soon down there? Like do we have any dates?
Yeah,
Not yet.
LET is going to be opening. They're actually trying to schedule a groundbreaking this Saturday. We're going to get you, ribbon cutting, yeah, excuse me. So we're trying to get that information over to you as soon as possible. But that's the newest one that's opening that we're really excited to announce.
That's great. And if a resident wanted to reserve one of those townhouses, how do they do that?
So we can send, there's the websites at Westminster Residences. But yes, we can definitely get you that information. So that you can
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Hott.
I don't have any additional questions, but I'm really excited about the presentation.
Thank you.
Counselor Dumont?
The conversation about the library spurred something. So if you're talking about a library, that's good, grand, and fun and all, but the cost comes to mind. We have some pretty big public ventures that we're doing between the courthouse and the water plant, and those things all, I mean, we've heard about that for the last month and a half, and I know Mayor McNally has brought up multiple times about the partnership and promises of Jefferson County libraries. So have we started looking at what that might actually look like to fund a library?
We'd be happy to break legs.
Yeah.
I've been paying for 45 years.
Yes, Tomas Herrera Mishler, I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries. And we've been in conversations with our friends at Jeffco Libraries, and there's, I think, a real interest in partnering with us on some kind of library facility in downtown. We've been looking at the possibility of a pilot, like a test case to see if there's demand and kind of how it fits into the mix downtown. We've had some conversations about some spaces that are exciting, and I think got some idea of the cost there. So it's an idea that we're pursuing, and we'd like to come back with more information once we have that in hand, particularly after we meet with our friends back at Jeffco.
Yeah.
I work with, on a different committee with CSU Extension. She, the CEO of the foundation, or the Jeffco board, sits on that committee too, so.
Great.
So is there opportunity to use any of the funding mechanisms and call that infrastructure?
You know, we would have to look into that and get back to you. I think we were pretty, we're at the very beginning stages of those conversations with Jeffco, and seeing what kind of funding sources would be out there. So I think definitely an avenue to look at and explore.
Because where my mind goes with that isn't just library. I mean, we have a lot of other need for facilities for, say, first responders and things like that. So is there possibility of using some of this space that we've bought to provide services? And if those funds of tax dollars that are set aside through some of these mechanisms would be an interesting concept to look at, I think. And I don't think necessarily if you could use it for libraries, I imagine you could use it for a litany of other things. So a little work for the attorney, probably. You're welcome. The other thing that I was curious about is obviously I know grocer has been on the list. And so that's been difficult to crack. So are there some other ways that we're looking at rethinking that? I mean, there's a lot of folks down there now. So I mean, even if you go drive around, say by the ballpark in downtown Denver, there's a lot of like little corner convenience stores and stuff. So I have to imagine there's probably a market for something now with that many residents. So are we looking at, smaller spots of having smaller like corner convenience stores or something like that? Because I imagine if you actually, near build out, you probably would still need some of those kind of little pocket amenities.
Great point. That's a great point. And I think the demand at build out can support two groceries in the area. But that's a great point, and we can certainly look into that. We're very much still targeting that specialty grocer to bring a little bit more of that high-end kind of need in the area. But it's a great point to look at.
Well, I think if you could, and I certainly don't have as much experience as Mayor Pro Tem does in this world, but just from a pure market, if you were able to get something like a corner market and start showing the demand for it, that might help the the bigger fish, I suppose. But otherwise, I appreciate getting an update. It's been a while, so we were at Cocopelli this last weekend and just looking over and seeing all the stuff that's there sitting on their patio now is it's changed a lot in the last couple of years, so it's exciting.
Thank you.
And those businesses on that side of the street have been waiting a very long time to watch everything come up, and they've been patient, and I applaud them for sticking with us too, because it hasn't been easy. Library for Jeffco, if you need arms twisted, we're happy to help. If you need the Jeffco side up in arms, happy to help with that. And do we have a farmer's market coming in there for the summer at least?
We do not. Unfortunately, there are not going to be nearly as many events this year because of the construction going on in Center Park. But we're always looking for options for farmers markets and being able to have them in the plaza and partnering with our folks in Parks and Rec.
I just thought that at least gives people the fresh vegetables and things that we see at the farmer's market. I know the one up at the Orchard and the one over at 96th on Saturdays. The Orchard does theirs on Sundays. They are well attended and would give that community and even the folks next door to us over in Lake Arbor a place to have farmers market and get used to coming over to get things. So I don't think it's too late to figure out a place that you could offer farmers market to come in and do that, even if it's more evening hours when people are getting home from work or something. So I applaud the condos. I can't wait until the groundbreaking. I can't wait till you tell us more are coming. I hear about that all the time from the other cities. They're envious and they're excited and they want to see it so that they can tell their council, see, they're doing it, so let's try to, instead of being paralyzed by what the state legislature has done and all the laws and stuff to make it difficult. So I'm excited for that. So thanks for the great update. It's always good to hear where we're at, what we're doing, and I don't see any more hands, so thanks for everything.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for the first to know about something coming.
Yes, and ma'am, if I could, just one more breaking news that I wanted to share.
Oh.
Part of that food hall, this wasn't originally in the original concept, but we want to share with you, breaking news, there will be a mezzanine level. And you know, Mr. Lee is from Korea originally, South Korea, and he is bringing a South Korean style karaoke bar. So to your things to do downtown. We just want to save that for last and give you that surprise.
Is that opening tomorrow? They're
I
coming.
wish. The renderings look amazing. It looks just like something, if you've been to South Korea or Japan and have seen how all out it is, it's really nice.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So,
Thanks so much for being here.
thank you.
That would be a whole new twist on policy and Pilsner tonight.
You have to sing your concern.
Have a little kimchi with your beer.
Thank you. Thanks, Malcolm.
I tried the Vada's tacos is good. I went there. Yeah. Yummy. I actually liked it better than Torchy's.
Okay, ready for city council reports?
I don't have a report this week. Well, I was gonna let you give that report.
All right. Councilor Carmen.
I did a tour of the Random Reimagine campus. It's really exciting to see and look at, and I'm really excited just to, see all the potential. It really puts it to life, what the possibilities are for the community, and to hear that, I think I already knew that they had classes opening this fall, this coming semester, but seeing all the construction in the works, it really tells you how amazing, how incredible that is to have classes opening this fall already. So that's really neat. And I think what they're doing by staggering, the hours, 3 shifts of students to make the most use of the campus is amazing. And staggering the opening dates. They've got classes starting immediately to make use of the space, which just gives some good feedback for what we just talked about. Really, make space and use of it right now to profit immediately. And then it'll fully open, the next coming year. That was really neat. I know I gave more of an update on CML last week, and so I don't know if I have a whole lot to add there. I'm good, thanks.
Counselor Iron?
I went to the Community Solutions members meeting, Clarify Pavilion, and they talked about the ballot initiatives for the state. One is RTD's 1% sales tax that pays partly for, I think, light rail, the other parts for the buses expires, and so they're trying to get it on the ballot to keep it going, the 1% sales tax. Also, they would like to do Bruce Tabor to pay for more RTD funding. I was interested in the car share, where they have a fleet of cars that they share with people, and they can pay a monthly fee to share cars. So they had lots of ideas, and if anyone's interested, I took pictures of other slides, so so I have quite a bit of information on that. So, but that's what I'll share for now.
Counselor Demott? Pro Tem?
So let's see, Friday, we had a very short Front Range Passenger Rail Board meeting. In that, one of the consulting contracts that was approved was to evaluate a structure for the district and its relationship with RTD and CDOT, whether it would be a standalone district or some subsidiary or kind of, relationship with either one of those entities. So that's to come. It actually has to be done by September of this year. That's from the requirement from the legislature. So it'll be kind of a fast process when, as with many of the things with this poor district. I think I may have mentioned this, that the vote for the tax for this Front Range Passenger Rail is going to be in 2026. So it gives a little more time to structure what exactly people are buying. Still means that we need to have continued conversations with the board and with respect to the station locations and analysis. That was another one of the consulting contracts that was approved, and starting to flesh out what does the station participation look like for jurisdictions who do have a station. What's that? Just overall feasibility look like for that first phase, which is the Denver to Fort Collins section. I have been having meetings with Adams County and Jefferson County commissioners and the Front Range Passenger Rail District to advocate for something in between Denver and Boulder. I think that's just a continued conversation we need to have, and
Press hard.
yeah, I think it would be helpful if we as a city think about analyzing the opportunity and the ridership opportunity that a station in Westminster might be able to garner for the Front Range Passenger Rail, and to work with them to make a case. Because again, we're relying, I'll say this till I keel over, we are relying on the quality of the ridership and this passenger rail line to prove up more, the Northwest Rail. They are still trying to figure out what does the Northwest Rail look like from what RTD has talked about doing the pilot service. So that still needs to be integrated in. I think there's some good opportunity to have that sort of folded in, some additional stations folded into the Front Range Passenger Rail. But anyway, okay, that's that. More fun was, went to New Persian Market at 112th and Federal. Go check it out. It's right next to Zoe's Coffee. They have good stuff.
Cool.
They just opened, sorry. That's why I mentioned it.
To piggyback on Front Range Passenger Rail, I was on a Zoom call with them. I think it was, I don't know, it was last week, one of the days that they had, and they just shared how the first, I still don't know how Loveland got a stop, but when they explained that every stop has 55,000 in a 5-mile radius, and that's how they chose, and yet we were overlooked. from where we sit is mind-boggling. But the second level they talked about was that they're willing to come and check out with us if we believe we should be in the running for the second level, which would be somewhere down the line, as all of this always is. And within the 5-mile radius, you have to have 10,000, which between Lake Arbor and what we have, I think it'll be mind-boggling what we have in a 5-mile radius, but they need to hear that because they obviously haven't studied us, so we've got to do our own cheerleading here, and we have to, I believe, hit them hard because they're just telling all of this stuff and they just are going down the track, so to speak, and we're being left off the track. So they said they will come out, they will check out what you believe is a good site, they will talk with you, but we need our ducks in a row before they come out here so that we can hit them hard. Here's the facts and disprove it. You know, they would have to disprove it because we've got the facts and we know how many people are within that radius, and maybe it'll open their eyes a little bit. So I just wanted to piggyback on that. I did go to the Together Jeffco roundtable last week. They're working on their comprehensive land use plan, and I think Mr. McConnell, there you are. I was looking for you up there. I think you had gone to one of the roundtables, I don't know which one, but they had asked for an elected, so I went and they just said, go sit at a table. I happened to sit at the transportation table, not knowing that. And so that was the first thing we dealt with. Well, guess what was missing on, not anywhere on the transportation? It was a big sheet, and they had it all lined up. One guess as to what was missing. What do we hear about in there all the time? Noise?
The airport.
Yep, there was no airport listed for transportation in Jefferson County. But I met the new Jefferson County airport person, and he wrote it physically on the piece of paper. So I think it's there now. It was just funny that I'm sitting there and all that happened. So good discussion there. Had almost a half an hour discussion with he and Ben from the airport, and he is ready for his new job. He has done some of his homework, and so he'll be out and about talking with citizens. After last week, we had people that came thinking, because we have it headlined on our agenda, hearings and other new business. And so they thought the park was a hearing. I've caught myself as I'm going through this and seeing the motions and stuff. I'll see hearings, and I've a couple of times, and Attorney Frankel has to go, no, there's no hearing, because I just read that and it screws me up. So I'm here to ask if we have consensus to change the agenda simply to make hearings their own number, say it's 10, and 11 becomes other new business presentations. So it is, if we have a hearing, it's going to be under hearings. If we just have nothing will be under there, but other presentations and new business will be under like 11. So alls we need, because it's in our protocols and everything, I need consensus to allow the attorney to put the zippity-doo-dah into changing the agenda.
I'll just say I fully support that. The better that we can be to be clear about what it is we're doing, the better it is for everyone.
I support it. I also know there's a program that this all fits in, and so if you need a little bit of time to go in there.
We have a new program since, and it's easier to adjust.
Oh, that's good. I was like, I don't know how hard it'll be.
Is there anybody that has a heartburn over changing it? I hear none, so you'll take care of it. Yes?
On the same note, because I've heard a couple times in recent history where people didn't make it for the cutoff. And I think that, like, I understand why we have the cutoff now, we don't let people just come in. But if a resident hasn't been in for a long time, who's somebody who's been here a lot of times, like, they're missing out because they think they can show up and not. So I don't know how we maybe advertise that a different way so people know that that's kind of changed. Because I've got a couple earfuls about it, and I think it's a fair frustration when they, you know, they're used to, 8 months ago they came in and were able to kind of come at the tail end of a busy night and still be able to speak. And now they can't because of the, you know, the new check-in. I'm not saying we should do away with it because I understand why we have it. I don't know how we problem solve that because I understand people's frustration around it.
Well, and we had last month, or last meeting, a pre-exec session, which went till 7:15. So I don't know when you cut off. Is it at 7? I don't know.
It's at 7:15.
At 7:15.
It's at 7:10 or 7:15.
Okay, so.
I have a question regarding this. Do people have to sign in person?
They do.
There's no way around?
There's not. We used to allow remote sign-in, and it led to a different set of problems.
Mhm.
So we have found that the easiest way is to have people show up and sign in. We do put the sign-in times on the agenda, and it's on the agenda page, but we definitely can, try to brainstorm better ways to get it out there.
Maybe all of us put on our Facebook and any other, maybe even where our signature is or something as they're writing, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good idea, but also, like, I think the city's been good in sharing, you know, the meetings coming up. So maybe as, like, on our social and stuff, just like a quick note, you know, please remember if you're gonna come speak on an issue, here's the guardrails around it.
And also, what about like on council nights, just having an A-frame that sits outside the door, you know, that says, you know, hey, if you're here for town hall, this is where you should sign in, and this is what time the cutoff is. If people are walking in person, they know right away. Just, that's a suggestion.
We actually have a person that stands out there with the sign up, so, we can certainly do that, but I guess, I'm sorry, I should not be brainstorming this. We will explore all options.
Lastly, Councilor Hott and I had lunch with Adita and her family. She was the 5th place winner of the National Spelling Bee. And what a lovely young lady. She's going to join our Yappers. I can't wait. She's headed to Legacy Ridge High School. She lives across the street from Front Range and went to a charter school in North Glen. Wow, we heard how the whole family was involved in spelling bees for several years. And we probably could be having lunch next year with this family because the sister came in 3rd place, and they just took the top 2 from state, which was Adita and another person. So she carries around a 10-pound dictionary, and that's her study guide. And it was just amazing to hear family. And it was fun because she helped her parents this past year with their questions to become citizens, and they just got their citizenship. So they're excited for the first time they get to vote this year, and just a wonderful family. And the CMO staff were very thoughtful and got a little charm bracelet that had a little bee for the spelling bee and had a little cow for City of Westminster. And she was thrilled. So thanks to everybody, and they just wanted to say thanks for the hospitality. An update for me. It has been a long 6 weeks. I have not had any cancer pills, which is scary in itself, and it was coming on 3 months of getting scans again. So the mental stress of going into each of those tubes and knowing you aren't taking any medicine, and what are they going to see? So with all 4 scans, there is no new growth, no new cancer, and there's many spots showing shrinkage. My kidneys, which were damaged from my 10-day stay in May with a new cancer medication, that I was taking and quit on May 19th, and so I haven't had anything since May 19th. They were talking dialysis and everything, and said they thought my kidneys weren't going to come back because they just stayed at this high level and wanted to start looking at dialysis. And I said, no, give me 2 days. I need to get this out to the prayer warriors, and then we'll see. Of course, eyes rolled, and 2 days later, the numbers started to go down, and Friday they came back to normal. So I've still got a ways to go with those, to be gentle with them, but they're back to normal. And my marker the day I went into the hospital was 353, which I started out at over 800. And so knowing, again, I've had no pills, I was worried when she went to tell me, and my markers were 143. She couldn't even believe it. So my doctor, the third time she called Friday, said, would you say thank you to the prayer warriors? So to all of you, I am doing great. I am back to my feistiness. I've got my energy back, and I'm ready to rock and roll. So I just can't say thanks enough, because it wouldn't have happened without all of you. So, City Manager?
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, ladies and gentlemen that are in attendance this evening, and folks that may be watching online. Real quick, a couple things. Before I go through the slides, since the council brought it up this evening, just so you all know, on August 5th, we do have a study session item on peak rail and the front range passenger rail, because I know we have two members of council that are intimately familiar with both, and we may have others that may not be at that same level, so we're trying to bring everybody up to the same level of understanding, and so Community Services is going to put that on. With that, next slide. So Sparkler Tournament, it's currently underway, June 28th through July 7th, down at Christopher Fields. We actually got to watch one of the teams play this morning in McFall Park and do some of the practicing. Triple Crown Sports will be honoring Ken Prorock. He's the Chief Deputy for the Moody County Sheriff's Office. He passed away in the line of duty earlier this year, and they will honor him with the For the Heroes Award during that ceremony on Wednesday. And then, as pictured to the right, following the ceremony at approximately 7:45 p.m., Mayor McNally will throw out the first pitch at the All-American game. So if you're looking for some fun and excitement, Christopher Fields is the place to be for the next few days. Next slide. Westy Winds wanted to recognize Heather Cronenberg. She presented earlier this evening. She's here in the audience and has been a member of the city team for a little while. She's been filling that role in an acting or interim role? Acting role. And so we did a national recruitment for that position, and she was selected out of a national pool here this past week, and we wanted to make sure that we recognized her. But if you read some of those bullets, she's served for 11 years with the city, various capacities, extensive background in real estate, both in the private sector as an owner's rep and consultant, all the way into the nonprofit world of the Nature Conservancy. And so great cross-sectional background, if you will. She also, education-wise, has an MPA from UC Denver, and then a BA from the University of Georgia. Is that the Bulldogs? Bulldogs, okay. Also involved in the Urban Land Institute and on the ULI's Women's Leadership Initiative Steering Committee. And so she's been actively involved in bringing on a lot of those developments, as she talked about this evening, in the downtown Westminster team. And we just want to say congratulations on the official selection, and we expect great things out of you. So congratulations. Please join me. All right, next slide. Some things to know. So tomorrow evening is the Wards Advisory Committee meeting. That's the first of two that are officially scheduled. It goes right here in this council boardroom from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. Also, we've got a special permits and license board meeting then on Wednesday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. In council chambers. You know, as I mentioned, the Sparkler Tournament first pitch goes about 7:45 on Wednesday evening at field number 4 down at Christopher Fields. The Uncle Sam Splash Bash is Thursday, July 4th. That's at Countryside Park and Pool from 1 to 3. Our city 4th of July celebration goes on Thursday afternoon from 4 until 10 p.m. at City Park. That includes fireworks. It's not listed here, but just for everybody's information, the 4th of July Thursday is a city holiday, and so administrative offices will be closed, but all of those folks that are working that day will obviously be taking care of a lot of those activities and celebration events. And then we've got a city council meeting coming up next Monday night, July 8th, right here in council chambers. Next slide. No information only items this evening. Next slide. And as always, encourage folks to contact us. You can call my office at 658-2006. Email me directly at the email listed there. Encourage you to like us on Facebook, follow us on X, check us out on Instagram, or ring our bell at Nextdoor. As always, want to remain accessible, responsive, transparent, and accountable. Had any questions? That's all I have this evening.
Just a reminder, any council members that want to be on stage to welcome whoever's in the park at 6:40. 6:40 we go on stage, and then you can either stick around or I go home because I can watch it out my back door. But 6:40 is the time frame. If you're not there, we'll say hi to you on our way out. So they have everything pretty well timed out for when things are. So, and I think, did everybody get a parking pass or something tonight?
Yes, they went out.
Do I have one?
Yeah, I think right
Yep.
there.
Oh, there it
in the back,
is.
Yeah. And so, and don't forget to do your green sheets for Abby. Any questions or anything? Okay, moving right along. That brings us to concept plan for the Kings Mill Single Family Detached Residential Development located on the southeast corner of Field Street and west of 91st Avenue. Prior to the meeting, staff will, nope. So do you have anything that you want to share with us first?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Before I read my thing?
Yes. We understand there's a little bit of confusion in the community regarding the ownership of Zerger Elementary School. I wanted to clarify to the community and the city council that it is currently owned by Jefferson County School Districts. It is for sale. The applicant tonight is interested in purchasing it, and they will likely provide you with a little more detail on that relationship and where it stands at this point.
The concept review plan tonight is for the Kings Mill single-family detached residential development located at the southeast corner of Field Street and West 91st Avenue. This is a concept plan review. It is not a hearing on a development application. Its purpose is to allow City Council to learn about a proposed project in its beginning stages and provide feedback to the applicant on the City Council's general impressions of the proposal. In accordance with the Westminster Municipal Code, concept plan reviews occur after city staff complete the pre-application review for a proposed project, but before staff perform a technical review for the project. Technical review, which involves an official application for an ODP, PDP, or amendment thereto, will occur only if the applicant chooses to move a project forward after its concept plan review. As part of our review process tonight, city staff will provide a brief introduction, and then the applicant or its representative will present an overview of the applicant's development proposal. City council may then ask questions of the applicant and provide the applicant feedback on the proposal. City council comments on the proposal are gratuitous in nature and are not binding on the city council, the planning commission, city staff, or the applicant.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. John McConnell, Planning Manager, here tonight to provide you with the staff introduction. So the project is located on the southeast corner of Field Street and West 91st Avenue in the Kings Mill North subdivision. This is the site of the former Zerger Elementary School, which is currently vacant. The property is approximately 8 acres. It's zoned planned unit development, or PUD, and designated as a school use as part of the original Kings Mill Preliminary Development Plan, or PDP. It is designated as public, quasi-public in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. On the left side of your screen, you see the zoning map, which indicates the PUD zoning in gray. And on the right of your screen, you'll see that the property is designated as public, quasi-public, as indicated in blue on the comprehensive plan map. This is the image that was provided with the the pre-application review packet. And this is what staff reviewed in conjunction with the pre-application. The proposal includes the redevelopment of the former Zerger Elementary School into a single-family detached development. The homes are proposed to integrate into the existing neighborhood with a housing product that's compatible with the surrounding lot sizes. The concept proposes 2-story single-family detached dwellings with front-loaded garages similar in style to the existing homes in the neighborhood. Notice was provided for the concept plan review tonight. The applicant posted 3 signs on the property and mailed over 1,400 letters. The notice was also posted in the Westminster window, and all required notifications took place on or before June 21st of 2024. For the applicant to pursue development of this property, they would need to process 3 development applications. This includes a comprehensive plan amendment, a preliminary development plan amendment, and an official development plan amendment. The city recognizes that there is a significant public interest in this development concept. If the applicant chooses to advance these applications, the public will have opportunity to provide input during the process. The first opportunity will be accommodated by the city-required neighborhood meeting. This takes place between the first technical review and subsequent reviews. The second and third opportunities would be at the public hearings of the Planning Commission at City Council, and these dates would later be determined through the development review process. And staff anticipates the review process would take approximately 8 months to get through, including the public hearings of the Planning Commission and the City Council. So the public will have an opportunity to provide input throughout that process. So this concludes the staff introduction. The applicant team is ready to provide their presentation to you.
Welcome.
My name is Jeff Keeley. I'm with GMC Consulting. I'm here with my 2 colleagues from Cardell. I would like to thank the council for having us tonight, and look forward to hearing your questions and your thoughts. I think, as you know, Jeffco is severely under enrolled in the school district, and so they've come across a handful of school sites that they're going to sell, and these were the first 2 that went on the market. So I just want to give you a little history of how we got here today. In 2021, they announced the closing of Zerger, and then they did lease it to Doral Academy for a time. In 2023, Jeffco listed the site and requested a request for qualification from us. There was a handful of groups that submitted, and then in late 2023, we were one of 3 groups selected to submit for a request for proposal, and then we were subsequently selected to move forward with the site. So Cardell Homes, and they can probably.
Sure. Hi, Sarah Daringer. I'm the division president for Cardell Homes. We began as a family-owned business 50 years ago, and we are still a family-owned business. We have 4 divisions, starting in Alberta, Canada. We have another one in Ontario, Canada, one in Florida, and then Colorado. But we've been in Colorado since 2005. We've built over 150 communities, over 20,000 homes across North America. We, as I said, we still are a family-owned business. Our board is still run by all 3 family members, and our CEO is our is the owner. He's the son of the original owners. We take great pride in building homes for the communities. We try to have a customer for life perspective. We build communities where people want to live. Obviously, Westminster is a place where people want to live. And we don't just take our homes and put them in communities. We put them in, we build the homes for the communities that we're building in. So we redesign exteriors and floor plans to meet the needs of the community. We take great pride in our craftsmanship, and just really building community is what we're all about at Cardell.
As John had mentioned, the current zoning is PUD within the Kings Mill PUD. It is designated as quasi-public in the zoning. So we kind of looked at the surrounding uses of the site, and most of it is residential low density. There is some residential high density or medium density to the southwest corner of us. But as we looked at it, we realized that residential low density is probably the most appropriate zoning designation for this site. And so we've updated our plan, which you'll see later in the later slide, but our desired density is 4.595 dwelling units per acre. We did, kind of look at the surrounding areas, and we wanted to look at, the adjacent and then a 1/4 mile radius around the site. And in this area, there's 196 acres, 930 dwelling units for a density of 4.73 DUs per acre. And then if you look just to the adjacent properties, it's kind of hard to see, but we broke them down to different blocks. It varies between 4 dwelling units per acre up to 6.5 dwelling units per acre. So we're kind of right in the middle of the pack. Here is our updated land plan that we took into consideration of the pre-application meeting notes that we got from staff. One of the main comments, I think, from staff was they want to have these view corridors into the Kings Mill Park. And additionally, under this plan, which is 40 units at 4,000 square feet, 40 by 100, we would have to dedicate an additional 1.4 acres towards the Kings Mill Park, which you see in the south side of the land plan. Here, I'm sure they can talk a little bit more about it, but here are some examples of the product that we are proposing to build on the site. There's different elevations that we can move around. And they are currently building this in Westminster Station, which has been very successful for them. So some of the enhancements that we're looking at is the visual appeal to the overall site. We understand that the school site is shutting down their water and their utilities to the site, so the maintenance costs to keep it up, I think it's just a little too much for the school district, so we want to enhance that with the residential that we're proposing. Again, we will contribute land to the Kings Mill Park. We'll update the infrastructure. Excuse me. There is a water main that they've asked us to investigate that's a little maybe past their life in Field Street. So we'll do an investigation to see how that looks. We will be connecting the sidewalks onto Field Street and through our community. We will increase the tax revenue for the city of Westminster, and then we want to create a cohesion between the existing residential and the new residential. Like John said, we will have a neighborhood meeting to collect feedback from the neighbors. We're committed to be transparent with our neighbors. We've talked about a community representative who could be the direct contact between us and the neighborhood. An email campaign, a website dedicated for the site with updates, And then, if we get into development, we want to do site tours and have open houses for the neighbors. We're aware that traffic and water are a concern of the neighbors and of the city. So I put together this quick estimate at the intended use of the site. As you can see, at full capacity of the school, it's a 480 student school site, and it generates roughly around 1,100 trips per day. Under our program of 40 units, it will generate around 377 trips per day. And I did consult with a traffic engineer to get those numbers. And then our water analysis, we took 1,100 square feet for irrigated area on site of the single-family lot. And we assumed 4 bathrooms for all 40 homes. And our calculation, our amount due is 520, which I think is less than what we first submitted to the town of Westminster. And I think it's an increase of around 3.79 acre feet of water for our new use. And yeah, just kind of end it, Cardell is a quality builder who puts the customer first. We are committed to stakeholder engagement through our outreach and our communication, and we are committed to building a great community. So thank you for your time. And
Questions? Councilor Ireland?
Did you know what the water use was for the school before the houses that you're gonna build? Do you know what the water use was?
off the top of my head, I don't recall. I think they had a 3-inch or a 2.5-inch water line onto the property.
No one knows.
We're just a slightly more than what they were using.
Slightly more, okay.
Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem?
Had a similar question, which, since you're assuming you're going to have slightly more water use than the school, I'm curious to know if your plans are to provide just water smart landscaping or very low water use landscaping, and how that can be more sustainable, either architecture and landscape design can be integrated in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll follow your code on the landscaping requirements, but in my analysis, I took 50% of the entire yard, and I think the requirement is only 50% of the front yard. So I think I was being very conservative on my estimates.
Okay, well, I would say it would be great if you can
Yes, absolutely.
look at
Yep.
reducing the water use outside. And then my second question is the portion of the site that you're providing to the park to the south.
Mhm.
I remember in the aerial, there's a lot of trees on that side of the school site. Is there an opportunity there to preserve some of the existing landscaping and trees?
I think so. That's part of our, I think it's part of the requirement of the city is you do an arborist that gets out there and kind of surveys all the trees. I think we're still pretty early in our design, so if we could work through and save some of those trees, I think we would absolutely do that.
Okay, so it would be nice to
Yeah.
be able to preserve the growth that's been there for many, many years.
Not have to wait 30 years for them to get big.
Exactly, yeah, okay. That would be preferable to save as many trees
Yep.
as possible. I like that you've updated the design to provide more visual access. Hopefully there's good pedestrian access. Would hope that as we kind of refine that site plan, that we look at just improving pedestrian crossings with painting or striping. So since we are inviting people down the street?
Yeah, so, sorry, we didn't put in the walkways, but we'll have walkways throughout the community, and then we'll install a walkway along Field Street that kind of wraps around the property. That was one of the requests of staff.
Okay, good. Yes, pedestrian crossings would be good. That's kind of it. Yeah.
Anyone else? Counselor Dumont?
I had a list of questions that some residents sent me, but you've answered a lot of them through your presentation. But I think there's some of the spirit of what they were asking, I think we could still probably get at. So one of the things they were talking about was the building and what's going to happen to it, and obviously the building would be gone. And I think part of the reason that they were asking is this is obviously a school that a lot of the neighborhood people have memories at. So, and I've seen this in other communities where they somehow honor those roots of the area with the school. So I don't know if you have any opportunities to do something that would memorialize Zerger. I think that would be a good move for the community.
Yeah.
So you may not have an answer for that tonight, but I wanted to share that feedback. One of the other things that they talked about, and you kind of got at it, was the view corridors. There was some concern about the homes on the east side of the development and whether or not, you know, what that was going to do to their view. And you may not, being this early, you may not be able to give any kind of feedback, but it's something that, you know, I'd at least ask if you move forward that you're mindful of. I think the rest of the things in here you answered as far as what the residents asked, but I had a couple other things on, two things. One, and this is more for the city probably, if we've thought about the cost to maintain the additional park space over there. I know that we have a lot of costs and we hear a lot about the challenges to maintain what we already have. So I'm curious if that's something that staff is already thinking about.
I think it's a requirement per your code that we do that, so I think, you know, hopefully our incremental tax bases would help pay for those improvements and maintenance of that.
So that would be something that would be on the development side. The other thing is when you look at your water use increase, is that taking into account the part that would go to the city? Because
That is not, no.
So, and again, so this would be a future thing. So if this comes back to us, I think that the council would probably want to see full increase of water, because I imagine that there would be an increase for whatever goes. Potentially, I mean, it might actually be the same, because I don't know, not knowing what the school was using, because that's probably grass now, and if it goes to grass, it's the city. But we still would want to know the total impact on both sides of it, because it's all what would come from our water source.
So you guys are gonna view it as service commitments, and this plan is excluding the park is 8 more service commitments than the previous use. So this
There
is-
probably would be both sides of the equation that would need to be answered
Yeah,
from both
absolutely.
the staff side and the developer side, but I want to make sure that we don't lose track of it in case that it comes back to us, because, I mean, otherwise, we're not really going to get to the answer. I think that I've heard 2 questions around the water, so otherwise, I would say that, you know, I'm glad that you realize low density matches the community better than, you know, something more dense in that area. So I appreciate the homework that was done around that in your presentation.
Counselor Hott?
Yes, so, this is actually my neighborhood. My kids went to Zerger when they were little, and, I've been able to see where my house is on the maps that you've been showing. And I walk by there quite frequently. I do like, so the houses, that you showed, it does match, with the current community, which I do appreciate. And I agree if we can save as many trees. One of the reasons I moved there is because it was an older neighborhood and had, you know, mature trees and all of that. So houses in that neighborhood span all the way from about 1,300 square feet to about 2,800 square feet. What square footage are you looking at for these homes?
So all these plans are about 2,200 square feet.
Okay, so that's about, and then my next thing I wanted to ask was about the environmental impact when it comes to demolition of the school. If there's any way we can do deconstruction over demolition, because it has a very high detrimental impact, demolition does, and deconstruction provides for a lot of opportunities to reuse portions of the school that are still usable and recycle quite a bit. So that would be very important to me when approving something, making sure that you're driving down that environmental impact when you're looking at, a demolition of the school.
We just signed our contract with the school district, so we're just getting into our inspection, but we will do our asbestos study and a phase one environmental to kind of give us the state of the school, and then when we get into deconstruction or demolition, we will keep that in mind. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Ireland?
Just one more question. So there's been some developments that they haven't had enough power from Excel. Do you know that you have enough power?
We do have will-serve letters from Excel for the site.
Okay.
Counselor Community?
Yes, I'm assuming we would have heard about it by now if there were, but are there any infrastructure updates to the site happening? Like at the city level for the water, or et cetera?
I think the only infrastructure that you guys pointed out was the water main in Field Street, which we need to investigate. I think it's circa 1970s-ish. So we will go in there, do our investigation to see if it can handle, our site, or if it might need an update.
Right, okay. And then I saw greenery on that map, for the land dedication. But seeing as it was a school, oftentimes there's families that live in that neighborhood because of the school. And so I'm wondering, for the kids in that area, is there any way, and maybe this is more to our city staff, that we have a playground in there or something that is still usable for the kids that went there?
Yeah, so at Kings Mill Park does have a playground, and then we do have play structures on our site. So, we will have an internal, about 5,000 square foot park. Don't know what that's gonna look like yet, but maybe if we could reuse it, if the city would like the structures on site, I think we'd be willing to, donate this over to you guys. I don't know when they were installed. I don't know if they're still within code or not, but absolutely, I guess the short answer is.
It's good to think about, since a lot of times the residents are there for a reason, and so, yeah, thank you.
You've answered most of the questions. I think I still have one for staff that we got questions from community, and that is, why didn't we buy it as open space? And they wondered if the open space fund that they just approved had any money in it, and I didn't know where we were with I didn't know if we have it committed, because I know we bought some things since that all happened. So I just explained, we don't own it. We would have had to go through this process to try to buy it, and we didn't. But we don't have just free access to this. So tried to explain, this went through a proper process. These developers were chosen. I don't know if you have your agreement contingent on if we approve that you can build there or not. With the school district, I don't know what that looks like, but those were some of the questions that came from the community, so.
I can stand here today. I'm Tomas Ureta Mishler, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries. And we do have some funds for acquisition of open space. And as you know, we prioritize some open spaces over others based on connectivity to natural areas, especially along creeks, and to areas of very high value from a natural perspective. So this site probably doesn't qualify for open space funding in that regard. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
There was just a lot of questions that we got in emails, and thought if we can put it on the record tonight, that helps for people to understand how we got where we're at. I too appreciate you looking at what is around there and you come in with low density, I think that makes sense. I like what you have shown us so far. I want to encourage the public. Nothing is being decided tonight. We're just giving feedback so that you know what everybody's thinking. You will go through the process with our community development and go through all of that, and there will be ample opportunity for them to be heard. And it sounds like you're going to be setting up some websites and things so that people can communicate with you. And that will be good. And I don't have any other questions, but thanks for coming forward and showing us.
John, can we hold the public meeting prior to our first technical?
So the question is, can they hold a neighborhood meeting prior to the city-required meeting? There is some precedent for that. Some applicants have exercised that. It wouldn't be a city-sanctioned meeting. You're free to do that. You'd still be required to do the city-required one between the first technical and second technical.
Okay.
But more communication, the better.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
As stated at the outset of this concept plan review, counselor comments are gratuitous and do not bind or obligate the applicant, city staff, the planning commission, or city council to any course of action or future decision. Do we need a break before our hour presentation? Okay, 5 minutes.
Too bad. They still make
Next
hot
up,
dog.
Parks, Recreation, and Libraries.
Right. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, so been working on this Parks Rec Library vision plan for some time now, and so I think this is our first official update, second, that's right, second update to the council. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Herrera-Mishler.
Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors. My name is Tomas Herrera-Mishler, and I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries for the City of Westminster, and I'm very excited to give you this update tonight about the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Vision Plan. I want to start by acknowledging Andrew Spurgeon's incredible work on this project thus far. He's not with us this evening. He is on vacation, lucky him. But boy, he has worked so hard and so well to get us to this point. I'm also joined this evening by senior members of the PRL staff. We have Amy Rhoda, who is our library manager, library services manager, Blake Ramsey, who is park superintendent and has been working on this project very closely with Andrew as well. Lance Johnson, who is our manager of parks, golf and open space, and Alex Reeves, who is our manager of operations. So, did I miss anyone? No, I got everyone. Okay. We just wrapped up the needs assessment phase of the project, and since we're going to be operationalizing the findings, it's, I think, a really good time to come back and check in with council before we land on our specific recommendations and bring a plan to you for adoption. So joining me this evening is Taylor Broyhill. She's a planner with Logan Simpson, our partner in planning this, bringing together really the PRL vision plan. Logan Simpson's team has been working with us to bring this vision together. They're specialized in landscape architecture, parks, recreation, and libraries. In fact, Jana McKenzie, who is on the team, was one of the landscape architects who designed Westminster City Park, including the idea of the grand staircase that many residents have come to love and enjoy. So we welcome your and encourage your feedback and questions at the conclusion of this presentation. I apologize for this slide. It's a tough one. But really what it does is it just shows you that we went through this foundational phase, really looking at previous plans, understanding our facilities and really undertaking a clear assessment of our existing conditions, looking at all of our programs. It's really was quite intensive and launching intensive community engagement. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then we moved into phase 2, which is really looking at the needs that our community has, and also benchmarking against some of our comparable communities in the region, looking at market trends in parks and recreation and libraries, and really getting, again, a lot of stakeholder public input. I think really through this work we've sought to understand the needs and preferences of our residents, analyze the market trends, review benchmark comparisons with peer agencies, and identify appropriate metrics to measure our performance. Getting ready to move into the next phase, where we'll form recommendations for the plan, operationalizing the technical findings into staffing, budgeting, and identifying priority projects. So why do this plan now? What is it that brought this to happen? Well, the 2023 strategic plan, focused objective 4.1b, calls for a new master plan for PRL to address the libraries, parks, golf, open space, trails, urban tree canopy, recreation programs, and recreation facilities. Now, the city's existing Parks and Recreation Master Plan was adopted in 2009, and it had a 5-year planning horizon. And it was very narrowly focused on parks and recreation. So it's really no longer suitable as a guiding document for the many, many things that PRL does. The city in 2024 is in a transition period. So in the 1970s to the 1990s, the city was its fastest growing period with large residential communities like Countryside and the Ranch. And the combination of developer contributions, city dollars, and partnerships created a lot of the parks and the facilities that we enjoy today. However, many of these facilities are aging, and our neighborhoods are maturing with changing demographics. The city's nearly built out with relatively few sites left for development. In the same way, there are fewer sites available to develop new PRL facilities. There will also be less developer contributions in the future with build-out, representing a real paradigm shift in how the city develops PRL facilities. We anticipate that there will be less developer contributions in the future with build-out with build-out there will also be limited new revenue sources, which further emphasizes the need to maximize the potential of all of our existing facilities and reimagine them for future generations. The scale and complexity of Westminster's PRL system could require a lengthy master planning process. However, the city's strategic plan set a focused objective for completing this plan by the end of 2024. We'll talk about the scope of work in an upcoming slide. The vision plan will seek to balance sufficient detail with actionable recommendations in support of efficient use of limited resources. The vision plan is our opportunity to understand the community's needs and preferences through a single, coordinated planning effort that we can use to inform subsequent, more technical work. By establishing an overall planning structure and implementation framework, the vision plan will inform site-specific plans for trails, trail improvements, open space, arts and culture, libraries, and other more focused actions to advance our vision attainment. So we've really been involved and engaged in a tremendous amount of outreach. The residents of Westminster have been really actively engaged in this planning process so far through a variety of in-person, online, and mailed engagement opportunities. So this includes things like a full-page ad in the spring activity guide that was sent to 67,000 households. More than 6,000 people have visited the Vision Plan website. 188,000 emails have been sent with an average open rate of 40%. We estimate over 750,000 impressions related to the Vision Plan at the recreation centers and the libraries. We also had booths at all of the special events posted on Facebook and Instagram. So the Vision Plan was featured in the Westie magazine and Westie e-News with a total of 1.3 million impressions so far, with lots of events coming up in the calendar. In addition to broad community engagement, we've sought to reach key stakeholders through really targeted outreach. Some examples include the City Council interviews, which were held in late January and early February of this year. We also conducted targeted outreach with the assistance of the Westminster Community Foundation. They reached to underrepresented and non-English speaking community members. They interacted with 124 participants, 55% of whom were non-English speaking. And even a few members of the unhoused community participated. An activity was created for children participating in the spring break camp to design the ideal park. And we saw some very interesting ideas. One of my favorites was a night park. Lots of cool ideas. And most recently, we've had a presence at special events, including movies in the park, the summer block party, and we'll continue to do this at all the special events through Westie Fest in October. There's a summary of all the engagement activities included in attachment 2. I'm going to turn it over to Taylor now, who will take us through some of the more technical findings. Taylor?
Great. Thank you, Director Mischler, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I'll now present a summary of the needs analyses.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, this cord's finicky.
I'll just reach. Okay. So I can kind of keep talking while we get the slide up.
Get it back up in just a
Okay.
sec.
from current slide.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, back in action.
Next slide.
Oh, I'll actually speak to the first one.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, we skipped a slide. Okay. So in January, we conducted a statistically valid survey that was sent to 2,000 Westminster households. And we needed a minimum of 400 responses in order for those results to be statistically valid. We received 446, so more than enough to achieve statistical validity, meaning that the results of the survey you can feel confident are representative of Westminster residents' preferences and opinions. Each of the surveys was sent to with a unique identifier to ensure representative sampling. So the results of the survey represent proportionally the 4 quadrants of the city as well as the 3 school districts within Westminster. And I'll jump into these tables in just a moment, but just to highlight some of the overarching results, a really strong preference for maintaining and existing the current PRL assets and amenities as a preference over developing brand new facilities. And some of the highest priorities you see represented here on this slide, these are summarized in the results of a formula that calculates the priority investment rating. And this was calculated both for programs as well as for PRL facilities and amenities. And so what this calculation does is it correlates unmet needs with the level of importance, so priority for residents. So it reflects both what the community has a need for but feels is unmet, as well as how important that program or that facility is to the community. So items are scored on a 200-point scale based on those 2 factors, so need and importance. A few important things as you review these results, whether you're seeing them here on the slide or in your council packet, and you review the full results, that these survey results represent Westminster residents. So this was a survey of residents of the city and did not include PRL participants who come from outside the city to use city PRL facilities. This priority investment rating also does not suggest disinvestment of programs or facilities that are in the low priority category. That category simply means that residents feel that the need is currently being met relative to how important and to what their needs are for that specific program or amenity. And so just to quickly summarize the charts that we're showing here, at the top of the list, this is on the left-hand side of the screen for facilities. Those top rated priorities for investment from the community are trails, water recreation, so meaning things like stand-up paddleboard, kayak, canoe access, or canoe launches, and fishing piers. And then rounding out the top 3 for facilities, natural areas, and open space. And then on the right side of your screen, their priority investment rating, top 3 for programs. Those were community events, outdoor skills and safety, and then how-to or DIY classes. And by outdoor skills and safety, we mean classes like survival skills or wilderness first aid classes such as those. You may notice that recent requests for disc golf courses and competitive tennis centers are not supported by the results of the statistically valid survey. However, the plan will strive to balance city council priorities as well as community interests with the results of these statistically valid findings. Additional input as part of the needs assessment summary, assessment, that helps us provide a basis for understanding a more complete picture of community needs and preferences, include things like Director Mishler mentioned the city council interviews that we conducted in January and February. We want to be responsive to city council priorities as part of this planning process, and so as a result of those interviews, we noted several key themes that have emerged, including a need to include arts and culture in the PRL department mission, a concern for the geographic distribution of PRL facilities, including specifically an interest in recreation centers for the southern and northern portions of the city, as well as a library in the western extent. Additional themes included a preference for caring for the amenities and facilities that the city already has, including investing in undeveloped or underdeveloped parks, and prioritizing the use of land that the city already owns for future parks. And it's a sentiment that we noted was supported by the results of the statistically valid survey as well. And also, through those interviews, a level of prioritization was also suggested, with some voices indicating that PRL may fall behind housing, water, safety, and infrastructure as a priority. And sort of equitable access to PRL facilities and amenities, we saw input from underrepresented and non-English speaking communities. As mentioned, we worked with the Westminster Community Foundation and collected input to help provide a human dimension to the technical analyses that have been conducted through this phase of the process. So the Westminster Community Foundation engaged 124 participants across 14 different focus group meetings. And key takeaways from those meetings include the need for language access at PRL facilities and in communications, a desire for outdoor swimming and for water features in historic Westminster, specifically park improvements in historic Westminster that include shade structures, seating, trees, drinking fountains, and restrooms. And then some concern for the hours of operation for programs and library hours relative to the needs for working people, and a related concern for the fee structure to support wellness and access to recreation for low-income and large families. And as a key reminder, these meetings also reminded us that transportation can often be a barrier for exploring PRL amenities and facilities outside of historic Westminster for the focus group participants who all lived in that specific area. We also conducted a market trends analysis to understand preferences and needs within Westminster as well as the regional market beyond the city boundaries in order to help refine programs and services in response to residents' needs. And this is attachment 4 of your packet. One of the key findings of the market trends analysis was that there is an increasing number of older adults, particularly those who are 55 and older, as well as notably that the Hispanic or Latinx population is continuing to grow at a slow rate, but proportionally for Westminster represents a larger proportion of the population than when compared to adjacent communities in the state and national data. And so recommendation from those observations is to continue to include a range of diverse programs that also capture market potential. And it should be noted that PRL Library and Recreation Division staff actively monitor participation rates and always try to be responsive to changing participation patterns, in addition to taking into account information such as what's presented in the Market Trends Report. We've also conducted 2 benchmarking analyses, one for Parks and Recreation and one for libraries. Those are attachments 5 and 6. And the purpose of these benchmarking assessments is to evaluate how Westminster is positioned relative to peer agencies in order to inform the establishment of key performance indicators for future consideration. For Parks and Recreation, we benchmarked the city of Westminster against Arvada, Broomfield, Boulder, Fort Collins, Lakewood, Loveland, and Thornton. Generally, the city of Westminster is on par with these communities, relatively middle of the pack in terms of parks and recreation amenities, but not necessarily continuing to lead the pack in the way that the city was a few decades ago. And this is a result of other Front Range communities generally expanding their parks and open space systems, so catching up to Westminster, as we know, who was very much on the forefront, especially with open space conservation. The library benchmark analysis employed a different approach and benchmarked against 48 peer agencies, including library districts, on 36 different performance measures. And that analysis further identified Westminster library system to be somewhat deficient in funding and square footage of library facilities when compared to peer agencies. Even though the statistically valid survey results that we just reviewed indicate that respondents largely feel that their needs are being met by the current system. And so you may be aware the library master plan process has also recently started overlapping with this one. So the results of these analysis will continue to inform that process as it digs even deeper into the library system. Finally, for this slide, we conducted population-based level of service targets for parks and open space, comparing how the city is doing in terms of achieving metrics that it set in the 2014 plan. And those have largely been met, in part due to the large regional parks and open spaces that are primarily in the western part of the city. But our analysis did identify a deficiency in neighborhood parks. But it should be noted that in many neighborhoods, park needs are often met by private HOA parks, and those were not included in the level of service calculations for the city-owned properties. Okay, so that was a pretty quick summary of the what. So talking about the facilities and the programs of PRL in our analysis. And so now I'd like to shift our attention to thinking about where, so where services are needed. So to understand the where, we conducted a neighborhood needs analysis, and this is attachment 3 of your packet. And this neighborhood needs analysis built upon a 2021 effort by the PRL department to assess geographic equity of access to PRL facilities. So we added another layer to this analysis by considering disproportionately impacted communities in the interest of identifying locations of community stress. So the map on the left of your screen there identifies disproportionately impacted communities using Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's EnviroScreen tool. So the variables that CDPHE is the acronym for that agency that they use to identify disproportionately impacted communities include low-income communities, communities of color, housing cost-burdened communities, linguistically isolated communities, historically marginalized communities, cumulatively impacted communities, tribal lands, and mobile home communities. And those are the sort of the composite of factors that identify those areas that you see sort of shaded in like a brownish orange on the left side of the screen. So those locations are identified by the state agency, and they follow census block group boundaries. So they include both residential and non-residential areas in their representation. So that is what the map on the left demonstrates, which is neighborhood need based on those indicators that I mentioned. And it's based solely on those factors. So the map on the left should not be construed to reflect the location or the quality of existing PRL amenities. They are essentially included on that map just as a reference point. So when you're looking at those disproportionately impacted communities, to consider where current facilities are located. And you'll note that historic Westminster is one such area that's identified as a disproportionately impacted community on the map. And you'll also note that this is an area that has the MAC, the Swim Fit, and Irving Street Library. So affirming the location of those facilities as being strategically positioned to serve a community in need. All right, so shifting our attention to the map on the right side of the screen, this is the walkability to parks and open space analysis that was updated by city staff, building upon an earlier analysis. So it now includes additional parkland and open space that's been acquired since 2021 when the analysis was last completed. So that map on the right side of your screen, which is attachment 9, it illustrates the walk shed from residential areas to parks and open space. And so this exercise determined that nearly all residential areas are within a 10-minute walk of a park or open space, with the exception of a few small areas near Shaw Heights. And it should be noted that there are 34 acres of public parks planned for that area, with the Uplands development that will help fill that park access gap. Continuing with the neighborhood needs analysis, we applied a similar logic in assessing access to looking at access to recreation centers as well as libraries in their service area. So we used a 10-minute walk shed for parks and open space but took an approach using drive time for libraries and recreation centers, recognizing that it is not possible to have a library or recreation center within a 10-minute walk of every residence, given the significant amount of resources to develop and to operate those facilities. So the drive time analysis, these maps, which are attachments 10 and 11, they show that the entire city is within a 12-minute drive of a City of Westminster or a Highland Hills Recreation Center, and that all residential areas are within a 12-minute drive of a Westminster library. While you'll note that there's some areas there that are shaded in pink, on the western side of the city, open space primarily, that are a 15-minute drive to a Westminster library. This analysis did not include library kiosks that are located at Westview, at City Park, and the MAC, and so those are further amenities that meet library needs in the community. The recreation drive time analysis did include Highland Hills facilities, which is a key partner for the PRL department. And all city residents, even those that are outside of the Highland Hills district, qualify for the in-district rate for using those facilities. And similarly with libraries, agency partnerships with adjacent and nearby libraries through the Colorado Libraries Collaborate program allow for any Colorado public library holder to check out materials from any participating library in the state. So there's reciprocity there. And then I'll close out the summary of the needs assessment by highlighting some location-specific findings. So the neighborhood needs assessment and our level of service analysis are helping us identify location-specific PRL needs. I mentioned earlier the citywide population-based level of service analysis. This is attachment 12 in your packet, and it found that the quantity in terms of acreage of parks and open space, which is around 53 acres per 1,000 residents, exceeds the goal that the city set for itself in 2014, which was 51.2 acres per 1,000 residents. It should be noted, as I mentioned, that the city's parks and open space is primarily, the acreage is primarily composed of large regional parks and open space on the western side of the city. And that the level of service analysis identified a deficiency in neighborhood parkland. But more specifically, these analyses have helped us identify potential actions within each quadrant of the city. In Northeast Westminster, specifically the area east of Zuni Boulevard, north of 112th Avenue, and south of 136th Avenue is an area that lacks library access and also has less park and open space lands than the western side of the city. In historic Westminster in the south, as noted, there are already 2 recreation centers, Swim and Fit, the MAC, as well as the Irving Street Library. And again, these facilities are strategically located as serving a disproportionately impacted community. This is also an area where there are many small parks in historic Westminster, but it's an area that lacks a larger destination park, particularly north of US 36 and Shaw Heights. Within the southwest quadrant, the area between near Westcliff, which is between US 36 and the BNSF rail line, was identified as a disproportionately impacted community, and statistically valid survey results indicate that this quadrant has a preference and support for additional outdoor adventure programming as well as arts and culture programming. So we're starting to be able to really kind of home in on some of the specific preferences and needs for these areas. And then finally, the northwest quadrant, which is well served by most measures that we've assessed through this effort. Most residents in that area have indicated a strong preference and support for additional outdoor fitness and community events opportunities. And I will note that through our future engagement efforts, we will continue to evaluate and have more focused conversations with the communities in each of these areas to further understand and address the needs of the populations in these quadrants. So that concludes a very high-level summary of the many analyses we've conducted over the last several months. So now let Director Mischler close out with our next steps for the process.
As you can see, we're currently wrapping up the needs assessment phase, and we're beginning to work on the operationalizing these findings into specific recommendations. Developing a plan that's responsive to the needs assessment is the key next phase for the vision plan. Basically taking and figuring out how to use these findings into our department's operations and budgeting. This work also begins to identify the department's core services. A financial assessment of revenues and known projects and life cycle replacements will be done. It's actually underway. And from these recommendations will be made relative to potential realignment for future projects, programming, and services to identify a manageable vision that can be supported through staff resources and realistic financial planning and prioritization of PRL system improvements. The plan is on track to be wrapped up by the end of 2024 and to meet the prior strategic plan action item, and the tremendous community engagement received is already helping staff shape our concepts for budgeting and future CIP projects. An outline of the anticipated vision plan and its components is included in attachment 13. This multifaceted technical work will be shaped by further input from residents, PRL stakeholders, staff, city council, and others. Upon completion of the PRL vision plan and subject to staffing resources, implementation plans that are more specific and or technical in nature will be developed. These implementation plans include updates to the acquisition plan for additional open space, parks and trails, updating our open space stewardship plan, the Trails Master Plan, the Libraries Master Plan, which has already begun, and others as determined through the resulting PRL Vision Plan. This concludes our presentation, and I appreciate the opportunity to brief you tonight very much. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. That's why we brought key PRL staff this evening to answer any specific questions you may have as related to their area of specialization. So thank you again. Thank you very much also for your presentation and being here this evening. Appreciate it very much.
Counselor Hott?
Yes, could we go, I think it was slide 8.
Let's see. Which one was it?
Yeah, slide 8. Yeah, so we're on 7, so there you go. So, if I understand right, I guess I'm just having trouble, reading from here. The purple area around Stanley Lake, are we saying that that is an area that, is deficient?
No, we're just
Okay.
simply saying it takes 15 minutes to get to a library instead of, was the 12.
Right, that's
So
Okay.
it just takes a little bit longer to get there. from there.
Okay, cause,
The eagles have to fly longer.
The Eagles have to, I was thinking the same thing.
because, just on, so it's technically Arvada, but just on the, southwest side, of where the lake is, just south of that, is on the Stanley Lake Library, it's right
Correct.
there.
Yeah, it's the dot that's on the map
Yeah.
there.
Oh, okay, so
Difficult
I
to
didn't know if
see
that was
there.
counted into the walkability, because it's technically Arvada.
So, just when we were doing this analysis, it was looking at the drive time within Westminster to a Westminster library
Okay.
specifically.
Okay,
But we
because-
wanted to indicate the other nearby libraries, so just to give a fuller context.
Okay, cause I live in that purple area and it's like a 5-minute drive.
Yeah, it's right there.
So,
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
I just wanted to point that out, that we do have a library really close, even though it's not technically a Westminster library.
Correct.
Okay. It is a
Yeah,
technical
yes, it is.
library.
Mayor Pro Tem?
All right, thank you for this presentation. I just have, this just one thing about our presentation. So it's general and it's for everybody, not for just this one, but if you can go to slide 9, this will illustrate it best. I'd really love for our presentations to have a minimum font size. And, you know, when we're doing maps and charts, like this entire slide is illegible. And so if we can just work towards having better quality presentations that are just legible, that would be awesome. So that's just a request for staff. So I have a bunch of questions. When you're going through and you have the types of programs and facilities, and you clarified that the lists that were on, maybe that was slide 2 or something, were that they, 5, that these are representative of people feeling like there was enough, they're well-served enough, and then the priority of whether or not they needed more. Is that, or?
Yeah,
is that-
yeah, you're definitely on the right track.
Yeah.
It's a correlation of 2 different questions that asked, the first being, do you have a need for this particular item, and if so, is it being met? And then the second question that's correlated with is, how important is that to you? So it's trying to understand both the scale of how important something is, whether it's important to a small group or a large portion of the community, as well as the level of need for a service. So there may be something that is very important to the community, but it's a need that the department may be delivering upon very highly already, and so it doesn't necessarily rise to priority status at this time. So it's correlating both of those 2 things.
Okay. So I would say that a couple of things. One, we're just pulling this from, the one statistical survey at a point in time. We have had a lot of focus groups and community touch points, and so I would hope to see that this is not the only thing that is in consideration when we think about facilities and programming, because we've certainly heard other inputs, not just at council, but I'm sure through all of the other input avenues you have. Also, I'd point out that, this is a point in time, and, honestly, since this was taken, we've lost for some people, lost a disc golf course. And we also, just from what I know of, have lost 2 tennis courts. So, as we're thinking about, saying that something's not a high priority, but if we're taking things away from where the community felt like, oh, I'm well served, it's not keeping the baseline. So I would just encourage that, because personally, and from what we've heard, there are things where the community would say they're not being well met. I understand there's a prioritization piece, but my family consistently goes to other cities for services like tennis, track, and soccer. So when I see like multi-purpose sports fields not being of a high demand, when I see indoor soccer fields, I know that market-wise, those are really high demand and need, and the area in general is not offering enough of these, and so I'm trying to understand, there's this latent demand, and whether or not, and how we integrate that demand analysis and shortage for space to the types of facilities that we're looking at providing. I don't know if you have an answer or any thoughts on that, the market piece in relation to what we're,
Sure. I think just first to recognize that you make a great point that this is one set of very data-driven analyses, and it has to be, correlated and in consideration with the community feedback that we're also seeking through this process, as well as just understanding staff's expertise and day-to-day experience in delivering these services. And so it's one piece of the puzzle. The market trends analysis, we did not spend a lot of time digging into in this presentation, but it did perform an analysis. Well, it looks first at national trends, but I think more importantly also has an analysis of programming within Westminster in terms of local programming trends, in terms of the enrollment capacity for certain programs. And again, this was narrowly at recreation programs. So that's one mechanism that we have to evaluate programs that have shown growth year to year, most recently looking at post-pandemic years. And so that is, and I won't go into too much of the detail here, but that is one tool that we have.
Are we looking, though, at our current offerings? Because, I mean, another piece that I go outside of the city, I do nothing in the city, honestly, for my kids and their recreational needs are not met here. And so we go to North Glen, for example, for performing arts, or Boulder, we go, you know. So we're constantly leaving the city to get those kinds of things. And so if we're only looking at our current offerings and the utilization of those versus the broader market area and what's working for people in other communities, how is that integrated in?
Yes, so the market potential, MPI market potential index was calculated and looked at for commercial, recreation, outdoor activity, fitness, and general sports. And I think a lot of those arts and culture elements would fall under what the Sports Fitness Association would categorize as like commercial recreation for things like art galleries, and we're showing for a lot of those things that Westminster has, if the national average is 100, Westminster's market potential is well over 100 for almost all of the metrics that were measured in that. So that's one way that we have to understand from a data-driven perspective if the city were to, or even any other provider in the Westminster area, provide programs or offerings, would there be demand for that? And so that's one way we have of forecasting that demand.
So as you evolve where you're going with just what you're going to implement, it would be helpful to sort of crosswalk that market analysis and feasibility. If we're not offering it, we're going to pursue it or we're going to expand it, to just make that obvious for us as part of that,
Yes.
that effort.
Right.
You talked a little bit about the revenue and, maybe future fiscal constraints on just our revenue sources. And I'm just kind of curious, where do we, if we're having a depletion of revenue sources for park development and maintenance over time, just kind of curious. I know we have parks that are yet to be developed. We have some in Uplands. We've got that one site, the random site in Westfield, and I'm sure there's others. What might be the impact on getting those parks developed, or have we what other revenue sources can we be looking at?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be challenging as we go forward to find the capital dollars necessary or needed to implement some of these capital improvements. There was a real emphasis on taking care of what we have. That's great. We have wonderful resources already. But from the market analysis, I think it's pretty clear that we're not meeting all the needs in our community for recreational resources. So I think there's going to be some tough decisions in the future about what are we going to offer and how much are we going to charge for it in order to not raise the bar above where certain people can afford. We have about I believe this is correct, 42% recovery rate on our recreation programs. No, excuse me, 46%. Statewide, the average is around 42%. So we're above what the state generally brings in from recreation programs. Nationally, the average is 18%. So for some reason, Colorado is considerably ahead of the rest of the nation. Our adult programs, we try to make them 100%. Other programs are subsidized that are not they're important to offer, but do not make as much money. And our senior programs are heavily subsidized, as are our children's programs. So I think it's all really going to come down to what is the council prioritizing, what do you value, and what do you want to offer our community? And then looking at what other resources might be available. We know that there are some grants available for some aspects of the plan, but I do think that eventually we're going to have to ask the citizens of our community if they want to support more of this kind of services or not.
Yeah, is there a point where we're going to hit, we're just going to dip below you know, it would be helpful to have a chart of revenues and expenditures and kind of when those revenues start to slow or taper off.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. We're really blessed that we have the post funds that are dedicated to Parks, Recreation, Open Space. I do think that it's a limited amount, and the demands for that money get bigger and bigger every year, so.
Because I still worry about the parks we have yet to build.
Say that again?
I still worry about the parks that we have yet to build, and then looking at
Yes.
the, I can't remember, it's like maybe slide 10 or 9, or whichever one was showing I think it was 9, showing the southeast quadrant of the city being really underserved in comparison to the rest of the community.
Correct.
I mean, even the Uplands parks will make a small dent in that number, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 5.83 acres per thousand compared to the southwest quadrant, which is 101 acres per thousand. So there's quite a disparity between those two sections of town.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to be done soon. So I think I've asked this before, but I would still love to see wherever we can capitalize on partnerships with other entities. So, you know, Broomfield's really close to us, you know, Arvada's down there. I know Highland Hills is kind of throughout the city, and I would, again, just love to be able to supplement the needs for residents and maybe some partnerships to be had.
I'm happy to report at council's direction that I have begun those conversations.
And then just the one note on the disproportionately impacted map, community map. I do wonder about that whole section that's along I-25, because that's the Orchard and high school and middle school. So I'd probably just maybe look at that data, and not really.
I had the same question. I think it's because it's based on census tracts, so they kind of sprawl over some areas that include a lot of commercial, right? And as well as the other residential, so yeah.
Okay.
I had the same question.
I know, it just makes it look more dire up there.
It really does, yeah.
Okay.
That is located at 136,000.
Say it again?
136 South.
136th at the north-south.
I think north of 128th, there's just, Tanglewood and you're right. I obviously I can't read it. Just saying.
We apologize for that.
But, okay. All right, thank you.
Councilor Ireland?
So I know when I took the survey, I talked about HOAs. Did you ever talk to HOAs about what they provide in their own communities? Is that even talked about in this survey?
We did not.
Because some do have little rec centers and in HOAs, so I just wanted to know if that was part of the equation.
It was included in considering the walkability to parks and open space, the parks that do provide public access.
But
that
not
are HOA
like
maintained.
workout rooms or recreation, that wasn't included?
We did not include those in the recreation center's analysis.
Also, since we are going to be voting on the dog park, or whose park, next week, I still haven't got the number of what we're spending currently on that area. And I would still like it before next Monday. And I'm also concerned that I've never seen a budget number for this department. And seems like we have approved some really expensive parks this year, not knowing if that was really a priority according to this surveys that we've been doing. $10 million park at the new downtown. Squires Park we just approved. People are upset that there's a dog park in there. I have not heard one person that wanted the dog park. And I don't know if we can still make a change. But usually when you build a house, you can make a change. And it's probably just grass that we're gonna put in instead of a dog park for children instead of dogs. I hope that we can still make that change, because I haven't heard one resident that wants a dog park in there. What else? I just would like the budget for one thing, so we know what we can prioritize for. It's hard to prioritize when you don't know what the budget is. And that's all I have to say.
Councilor Camelia?
Yeah, so it seems to me, I guess I'm still a little unclear, because I thought we were getting the PRL vision plan, but it looks like this is just an update, because the plan isn't here, right? Are we getting the plan later? Okay. Okay, so, and that answers a bit of my question when we said we might need grants for the plan, but we don't really know what the plan is quite yet. So we're still working on building that out. Is that in progress?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's right. These are essentially the building blocks, sort of the data building
Right.
blocks that we've been assembling.
That you've been collecting, okay. And great job doing such a thorough analysis on what it is that we need and making sure that we address the whole city's needs. I think that's a great idea, and then taking our input as well, so thank you for that. I guess, so I saw one of the, I think it was like problems, I forget what slide it was on, but it was saying that transit might be a problem accessing some of these items. And so I know we keep going back to this with the Via Transit. I don't know if it's in the works or where we're at with it, but if we had something that circulated through the city, do we think that would make a significant help in the uptick of access for residents so that they could, because I am concerned that we will create things that people aren't going to use because they can't access them. And so how do we solve for that ahead of time is where I'm going with that. So where are we with the Via Transit? Does anybody know?
I just know it costs $42 a ride.
Oh, you said,
So
yeah,
I don't know if
okay.
that's really worth it to get someone to the rec center, but not to me, but.
Weren't you gonna, I can't remember with whom I was talking about, there were multiple transit options that we could be looking at, whether, oh, I know, this was potentially at the Heritage Church Ranch. We were talking about, oh yeah, it was a resident, it wasn't you, it wasn't you, Mark. But there was a resident who seemed to be very knowledgeable about the different options and, whether Via Transit is the route to go or not. So just, sorry, the sidebar, but it's relevant, but having an understanding of what our options are for that personal transit, flex ride, Via, Lyft, et cetera, would be really helpful as we go into budget and whether or not we're funding Via or if we're funding something else.
Thank you. That was much better put. And I just want to bring that up again because it's been a part of so many of our conversations with the seniors and with the housing, with the accessibility at the shopping centers. I want to know what we can offer and what that looks like before we make decisions. Especially if we have something that just circulates. I would love to see something that circulates free for everyone, right? Definitely focus on senior needs first, but if we have stops around the city and then they stop at the rec centers, then that offers options for everybody in the city and they can just hop on and it'll increase our usage, I think. Anyway, I think that's all I really had to say around this. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for pointing out on that slide. If you could include the questions that the graphs are supposed to be answering, that'd be really helpful for me because I didn't know what we were answering for. And so that was confusing until we reiterated it. And so I think we can work on that and a little bit of the conciseness, yeah.
Councilor Hutt, anything?
I did have more. Yeah, actually, you probably noticed I was writing. I thought that Mayor Pro Tem made some good points, which just reminded me. So since these surveys have been done, we have gotten a lot of emails regarding tennis courts and disc golf that it wasn't on people's radars when we were doing this. So those are things you don't see. You don't see all the emails that we get. And then also, in talking about tennis in the past, we've talked about it having a higher revenue than other activities? Is that something that we've looked into, the differences and what kind of revenue tennis would bring in versus other activities? And then also, when we had our last town hall, it was very interactive, and I know that some of the things that people brought up as priorities for the budget also included PRL, so I'm wondering if you used any of that data for this, since that was more recent. And then the last thing, so one of the things that we talked about was prioritizing caring for what we have. And I'm wondering if we have identified those areas that are not being maintained to prior levels, and how do we identify what parks or what areas of parks to no longer maintain. And I bring this up, and I brought this up in the interview because the park that backs up to my house, Dover Square Park, there's an area that you stopped watering, but that's the area that backs right up to the houses, and it's a fire hazard. I mean, the weeds get pretty tall before they get mowed, and kids can't play in that area, pets can't, go in. It's uncomfortable. It's dry. And again, it's a fire hazard for all of those homes along that. So, how do we identify areas that are or that are not being, when you don't want to maintain them anymore? And then are we thinking about maintaining areas of parks that we've stopped maintaining? I don't know if that was like a little convoluted. I was trying to.
I think I can address that particular issue. Is part of what we're doing is with our mandate to reduce water consumption, is we're putting in new irrigation systems as we're able to. And part of that is doing an analysis of what turf is not being utilized for active recreation. And those are the areas where we prioritize restoring native landscapes, putting in native plants, removing the turf, the Kentucky bluegrass, and so they are maintained, but they're maintained in a very different way than before.
I can assure you that area is not being maintained. It's just growing. There's nothing that's been planted there. It's weeds, and they're very dry. And so my ask is that I hear you on the waterfront, and I'm all about conserving water, but we need to be very careful that we're not creating fire hazards for neighborhoods. Councilor DeMott?
Thank you.
I appreciate the thoroughness. I have a couple things to say. I'm a little frustrated with it, to be honest with you. I look around this room and think back to 2021 when disc golf was taken. We were promised then, and at this point I look around this room and I see less than half of you that were here when we were told that it would be put back. This isn't the only area of our recreational programs where I've heard concerns about how we're doing business and how people are being able to participate. I brought up, I play at Christopher Fields on Wednesdays, and I brought this up before, that now you have to have numbers on your jerseys. So like my team, for example, we went out, we bought numbered jerseys. That very first week when we were told if you stepped into the batter's box and you didn't have a number, you would be out. To my surprise, it didn't matter what the number was because the other team we were playing had all 0. And I said, well, what's the point of a jersey? And the umpire told me, not my rule. That was what he barked at me. So these are the kind of frustrations that I hear in one of our facilities, the one that I actually do participate in, and I spend a good deal of money, as do many people on those teams, as those prices have went up and up and up and up. We've seen a variety of rule changes. And the reason I bring it up is rules. You had mentioned, Director Mishler, that it's around what does the council value. And so for me, what I value is government keeping its word. I value government being even-handed. And when I hear your presentation, a couple things that I take away from it, that this particular thing maybe didn't meet the survey, but it meets some of your criteria. We talked about barriers. If you do a simple Google search, and I know the Mayor Pro Tem brings up a lot about golf, not your sport, kind of looked at, if you look it up, it's looked at as a rich man's sport. I enjoy it, but I'm not very good at it. Probably done it maybe 5 or 6 times in my life. But disc golf, one of the things about it is it doesn't have the money barrier. We had a public course that we took away that nobody had to pay for. What they had to bring to the table were their frisbees or discs that they use for that sport. But I think that the bottom line of one thing that I think that councils over the 3 councils who have covered this issue has tried to address, not just in one area of government, is transparency and trust. And so when we promised to do something and we promised that we were going to put it back, to then have a presentation where I'm being told that it's not supported by a survey, I don't really give a rat's rear what the survey says about it, to be quite frank. And that's putting it as nice as I can hearing that, because we were told, and I've been told since 2021, that that was going to be put back. If you look back at what the citizens were told in 2021, when they got upset when we took it out, which I understand the reason we took it out, I understand the work that we were doing and the construction we were doing, but they were told, you are going to be happy, we're going to give you something that's better. That is what was told. I was trying to pull up the email here. I know I have it somewhere, because that is what was told. So I want us to at least think about that. I appreciate the needs. I think it's important for us to look at it. You keyed on some important ones, such as historic Westminster and the lack of amenities down there. I think some of the other counselors made some good points, especially when it comes to Stanley Lake Library. We just had that same conversation. Jefferson County is our partner. On that side of Sheridan, we look to Jefferson County, and those of us on that side of Sheridan pay taxes for it. So I think that it's good that you pointed that out. We need to calculate that in that drive time, I think. But I guess my ask is that we try our best when we make promises to the residents, that we keep them. Because I do know, and it was before my time, and I think Mayor McNally was probably here when disc golf got put in, but that was a citizen-driven initiative, why that went in. And, that was something that was hard for the community to have taken for them in the midst of, everybody trying to be outdoor at the tail end of the pandemic. So it's going to continue to be a sore spot for me until we address it, because we gave the residents our word that we were going to do something with that. And I think that we need to make sure that we do, amidst all the other things that I know that we have responsibilities to do in your department.
For me, after reading all of the report, really need to know, and I've heard you say you're going to do this, the cost for maintenance on what we have today and what it takes to maintain to our standards what we have today. We need to know that. Right now, we don't have a beautiful city. I mean, I've been here when that has been a huge goal. And right now, it is weeds, weeds, weeds. And you know that I complained about Westminster Boulevard. It opened a whole nother Pandora's box at my knit and crochet group. They know every boulevard that has the same weeds, and just, we've never seen it before. They said the entryways into the city are not beautiful this year. So it's just, again, what we have, how it's looking, and I know we're doing contract work, but my question then is, if a contractor's not doing what the expectation is, I don't know what we have in the contract to either have them do the job, or do we find somebody else? I don't understand all of that, but I just know how the city looks right now, and it's not beautiful. So I look to, we can't just keep going to people for money. I honestly worry for this city with all of the debt we're going into. So we have to think differently. So in my head, I think partnerships. I think, as you said, you're talking to Broomfield with the DIRDA, even at the youth group. We had 2 students there because that night that the Yappers did the concept plan with what map we had, and we happened to have the one to set a rec center up north. Even those students knew that is a finger of the city. We don't know how many people live there, but on the east side of Huron is businesses. You have a section then that goes on the west side and then becomes Broomfield. You have at 120th, the new Highland Hills took that big, that used to be a gym and workout place. They took that over, so you have that new. At 128th and Zuni, you can't even get in the old Safeway parking lot to go to Frolics because you're having to go clear down there to park in order to go there. I have no idea what their numbers are, but they are packed. Packed. And I know it's at a price we can't do for a rec center pass. So they're doing well. And then you have Lifetime Fitness up at 144th. So I look at that corridor and I say, we have a lot of HOAs up there. And so we do need to talk to them. In the area that the 2 grandsons live, each apartment complex has their own workout buildings. They have buildings for meeting rooms. So what can we take on the road, talk to those people, look at, I'm sure some of the apartment complexes have very young people. What are their needs that we could bring in and offer in conjunction with those HOAs? And I would sort of guess, knowing the population of those different complexes up there, you would have different needs if they would allow us to use some of their rooms. Then you look at what's going to be built along between 136th and 142nd. Even looking at the Orchard, they have been so good in previous years. When we had REI up there, they had a community room. Well, who else is up there that believes in the community that would give us some space to offer some things? That we don't have to own a building, but we're doing it in partnership. And I just think with all the HOAs across the city, we have to have those conversations. And I look at St. Mark's. A lot of those folks have different abilities, and you have widowers, both men and women. Coming in for something that they're interested in, and it could be a daytime thing for mahjong or what, I don't care what it is, but I think we can connect with people in a way we have never thought of, and make Parks and Rec look pretty different, and maybe not at the expense of having to have a building. So that's where I come from, and the first thing I'd have to know is what it does cost for what we have today. And as far as the open space piece, I felt last time that they did it, I knew we needed to finish up our connections, but the next time we go to the voters, it needs to be solely for one thing, and that is for maintenance. And I would be a champion for why you need that, because I'll be long gone before that, Alpha Council before that comes up again. But people need to be educated right now as to why we have that money, what it's done, but what we need it to do in the future. And start that education piece now so they understand it. The last piece included so much gobbledygook. It was not just for open space. Get rid of all of that. Make it for maintenance for Parks and Rec, open space, and you've got a pretty good chunk of money to use. So those are my thoughts.
Mayor, I just had a follow-up real quick for Councilor Ireland. You commented that you were waiting on the cost for who's and the maintenance, what it costs us. I sent that in an email on June 19th at 1:15, so you may want to go back and look at that. It was number 3 on that email. And then also for the council, you asked about, you wanted to know what PRL's budget is. For the entire council, the budget, the adopted budget for 2024 and years previous is on our city website. So westminsterco.gov/budget. That'll take you to the landing page for, I think, 5 years worth of budgets all lined up there. And
Does it have what you spent so far this year?
that would be in the financial reports that we provide. Those are under the transparency icon. We publish monthly monthly financial reports, and you can dive into what PRL has spent by category in that monthly financial report. But the budget as a whole, to know what PRNL has been authorized or allocated this year, would be in the adopted budget in totality by particular line item.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
I see no more questions. Do you need anything else?
Just that the next really big analysis that we'll be undertaking is a financial analysis. So that's next as part of our operationalizing the plan. We'll be back.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Parking or break, Mayor? Parking or a break? Do you want a break or do you want to go into parking?
Go for parking.
Let's do it.
Get it done. Parking.
All right, let's go.
From parking to parking. Sorry. I didn't hear.
While we switch out, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, I don't remember exactly when, but earlier this year, we had a conversation about parking, and there were some very specific asks that the council asked us to research and then to follow up on. And so I think there's 4 items, and that's what we're coming back to you tonight to speak to specifically as those 4 items. So without any further ado, I'll pass it off to Mr. Otzelberger.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City Managers. Eric Otzelberger, Operations Manager for Community Services. Director Kimball is here with me. And I am here to talk about the crowd pleaser that is parking management in the city. And if you recall, it was the first meeting of May. We had a rather routine housekeeping item. And during that item, there were some specific items of interest that were raised. So we're here to discuss those, provide a little information this evening, get your overarching direction. And then, of course, if there are other items, through your efforts and constituent service that you have questions on in general about parking management, I'm happy to address those. So here are the specific items that were verbalized by City Council previously that we'll touch on this evening. So there are 3 specific items. One is parking within 5 feet of a driveway, work vehicles in residential areas, and then the global question of paid parking in downtown Westminster. And of course, if there are other items this evening, please let us know. So this is just an overarching slide, just as a reminder of we're about 1.5 years into civilian management of parking regulations across the city. That has provided resource relief to the police department and municipal court. I think that's kind of missed sometimes of, taking things out of the court system. We've instilled a lot of administrative efficiency by doing that. There was a 6-month check-in about 1 year ago after that civilian primacy with parking management, and had a touch base with the council at that time. Thumbs up was given. And then there was a specific policy question related to RV parking in the city. We had some loopholes, so we closed that. So it's a 72-hour parking overall, RV parking overall. What you see from a financial standpoint there is just how we ended 2023. It's about a 50% revenue recovery rate. We're not in this business to write tickets to make money. Our goal is education and compliance. However, economic motivation, unfortunately, is sometimes the path to compliance on violations. So the first item that was specifically brought up in May was parking within 5 feet of a driveway. That is something that is found in the state of Colorado Model Traffic Code. It's a safety and visibility issue when backing out of a driveway. Of course, a little more consequential depending on the type of street it's on. If it's an arterial or collector with higher volume, higher potential safety risk. Residential streets, not as much, but the model traffic code is sort of universal. You see the Westminster Code reference. We have a specific reference in our code related to this. This is largely a complaint-based activity for our parking enforcement officers. We continue to coach and work with them on a warnings first, education first approach. If there is a chronic, legit safety issue that is complaint driven, the fine for that is $30. The second item that was raised was general question related to work vehicles. And this issue does come up quite often. In fact, this morning, one of our more frequently engaged residents that I've had the pleasure of spending significant time with was raising a question on this. So code does allow one work vehicle per private property in the city. And this is, I think, a part of our job is enforcing the intent of the code. So whether it's an electrician, HVAC technician, plumber, I think those folks that came before us, there was some deference to supporting that. However, placing that limit at one truck, because you don't want Jim's electrical service and Jim to say, hey, employees, let's say he has 2 employees, you can park your trucks at my house and it's no big deal. We don't want to be creating that commercial impact in a residential neighborhood. So that's where that one limitation comes from. Once again, warnings first, $30 fine for violation. There are some vehicles that there really isn't a path to legitimacy, and those are larger vehicles, and this is pretty standard across the state of Colorado. There's a 35-foot limit. Anything over 35 feet can't be parked in a residential district. Anything over 11,000 gross vehicle weight, and that's a rating on what the vehicle can carry. Once again, those limitations in Westminster Code are aimed at preserving the nature and character of a residential neighborhood. For both of those, it's warnings first, because this is more of a commercial operation. You'll see that there's a $30 fine for the 35-foot, and we have 3 levels of fines for parking violations and the gross vehicle weight because of the potential impact. That's our highest level fine at 100. And then downtown parking. This has been it's been a journey, continues to adapt, will continue to adapt as downtown develops. And there was a lot of thoughtfulness into the parking strategy for downtown. But that being said, it's not baked and this is what it is. There is some nimbleness with that. But in trying to keep things as simple as possible for most visitors, there are well over 1,000 spaces where there are up to 4 hours of free parking. You don't need to mess with Passport, the app. You just park, go, and enjoy, and whether that's for a show, restaurant, whatever. For on-street, now that on-street, and I think, and perhaps I'll be corrected here, but that's where there's, I think, more interest in, okay, what other options do we have there for free parking? They're south of 90th. It's $1 an hour with a 3-hour limit. There are a few. There's some ADA spaces, some 15-minute loading zones. So we've tried to be responsive when there are business needs. Whether it's Uber Eats or someone running into Superfood Republic to get a smoothie. So we've tried to be tactical, or dropping off at the movie theater. So we're not carte blanche making changes, but trying to be strategic and tactical in how we adjust that. And we're not charging for on-street parking to be mean. The strategy behind this is to promote turnover for that interface between commercial activity and residential. You see it on 90th at Westminster Row, because we don't have the activation of commercial space or anything to the north where it is free on street. And the private residences and apartments, in downtown paid parking can range anywhere from $60 a month to $100 a month. So you'll see folks right to the north of Westminster Row that will park there, and if you're properly licensed and registered, you have 15 days till you have to move that vehicle. So we don't think that's necessarily in the best interest of the merchants south, where we have the commercial activation. So the philosophy is trying to manage that turnover. And then for my perception is there are more questions on the on-street, but just for the sake of discussing briefly off-street parking, there is that abundance of both surface lots and garage parking for free up to 4 hours. And here's the rate structure for the time over that. So if there's a unique situation and someone's looking to make use of downtown off-street parking for a longer period of time, we do have a rate structure that accommodates that and tries to keep in mind the private property interests and their rate structure to have some sort of parity in downtown. So that's my quick overview on those. I'm open, if I miss the boat on any one of these, and open to questions. And we'll open it up.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you for going over all these different items. For downtown parking, since I was an integral part of that one, the only thing that I think that could be helpful for our community members on the on-street and any of the paid parking is to have a cash or card component. I think it's difficult to expect everybody to be familiar and comfortable with the parking passport thing. I know it's easy. I've used it. Even I, at first, was like, oh, and I want to use this. And I'm happy to pay. In fact, I always go down there and I park on street and pay. But I think for people who, aren't as comfortable with paid parking, that as we move forward, if we could just look into options at the kiosks, I thought it was some type of thing where that could be modified at a later date to just add a component that allows cash or card. Even having a card would be just more accessible to people. I just want us to feel accessible and not scary, because, yeah. That's all I have to say about the downtown one. But I do wonder, and this kind of actually goes to the parks question of revenue sources. I go back to, are there some other revenue sources that can help supplement parking, like the speed cameras or red light cameras that can, as we're penalizing people for doing things that are very unsafe that we see every day, all the time.
Red lights.
Yeah, I would love to be able to put that into our parking efforts. So that's just a thought there as a revenue source. And here's a question I have regarding the 5-foot distance from a public or a private driveway. When we start to have areas of the city that are going to be subject to intensification over time, no minimum parking requirements, I just wonder how long that can last.
Mayor Pro Tem, that's a good point, and I will tell you there are neighborhoods right now that, and I'll throw out Apple Blossom is a good example, where the on-street is a critical part of that infrastructure, just that 1950s built environment. We have mediated in situations, and part of the mediator roles we play, where maybe someone's 3 foot. Is it really a safety issue, and what's the parking on there? So we do have operational and administrative discretion. It's similar to law enforcement officers deciding, are they going to pull over everyone that goes 5 miles an hour over the speed limit? Probably not. So we try to use good judgment, because as you can imagine, we get into some interesting neighbor situations, and we don't want to throw gasoline on maybe some of the discord that's there, but at the end of the day, it's about safety and visibility. So if someone's actually obstructing ingress and egress, or they're maybe passively aggressively being there's no feet, okay, you know, we'll probably engage and enforce on that. If they're 4 feet, but there isn't a safety issue, you know, we try to use our best judgment, because there are, to your point, but even currently, there are environments and neighborhoods that rely on that on-street parking, and they are public streets.
Okay.
On our street, just on my first 5 houses, you would lose 1 parking spot per house to implement that.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I didn't even realize there was that, I'm like, I do that every day, okay. All right, thank you.
Who had their hand up?
I did, yes. I just wanted to clarify, parking of work vehicles, do we mean, I guess, what does that mean? Are we talking about residents that have a commercial vehicle, parking their own commercial vehicle? Is that what we're talking about?
Counselor, correct. So let's say, you know, I work for Jim's electrical service, and you know, I have a company assigned vehicle. For whatever reason, Jim's electrical service doesn't have a ability to park there, but it's a take home, because let's say I'm doing 24/7, maybe emergency call out, or maybe plumbing is more appropriate. That's okay, provided it's limited to 1 and it's under that 11,000. I mean, then that's a big vehicle, and the 35 feet.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure if we were talking about, I mean, what if you contract out and they bring 2 trucks? And so that was, you know, when they're doing the plumbing, I don't know. Okay. I think that's my only, and I hate to agree, but I do agree. I think accessibility is important, as long as it doesn't cost us. I think it'd be important to know, is it going to cost us more to collect the change than it is to provide the change? But I think we should know that before making a decision. But I also think that if your phone is dead, you should still be able to park. So, yeah.
Or you left it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can look further into that, because part of our contractual relationship right now with Passport is their compensation is per transaction.
Mm.
So we'll have to investigate further if we introduce that card and/or cash component. Both technically, how do we do that, and how would that adjust? Because right now, their compensation is based on activity, and there's no minimum so it's a pretty cost-effective approach for the city, but we can investigate.
And that's important too, so it's good to talk about it.
Councilor Ireland?
I'm just trying to understand why we are paying more to police parking than we're making. Can you tell me what makes sense about that?
Well, Counselor, if we as the city,
Especially in the new downtown.
okay.
I'm not worried about the other areas, because I don't think you police them that much.
Okay. Well, I would just with all due respect, offer that a 50% revenue recovery per what you were talking about with P&L isn't something to sneeze at, you know. And I think it's difficult in the enforcement business of, you know, some cost recovery is a good thing for the operation. However, you don't want to be writing fines to write fines, or you create, I think, some perverse incentives if you say, oh, we're an enterprise now, and we need to recover 100% of our costs. That, you know, our goal is safety, compliance, neighborhood peace, not generating revenue. So I'm not, you know, I don't know what's,
I just
it's
know
not
there's
perfect.
older people that go down there and will never go back. They don't know how to use the app. They're frustrated, they get a ticket while they're there, and they're never going back.
Mhm.
So for the older people, they're not good at these app things, you know? So they're never going back. So I don't know how we solve that problem, so.
Counselor, can I ask, with some of the constituents you've heard from, is there a reluctance with the surface lots or the garages?
Well, I know,
Is there the desire for on-street?
One gentleman was in JCPenney's, came out, had a ticket for more than whatever he bought in there. he's never going back. People have gone to restaurants down there, got tickets, never going back. I mean, there's a lot of frustration, especially with older people. They don't use phones and apps. My dad doesn't even own a smartphone, to tell you the truth.
No, and I hear and understand that, and that's where, I
And
mean, it wasn't.
our population's aging, that's the problem, you know?
And that's where, it wasn't that long ago that we revised the signage. Once again, I understand and appreciate if we're
And they don't
talking
wanna
about
walk
on-street.
that far when they're older either, you know? There's
So it's more of the interest in the on-street.
handicap parking and all that.
No, it's fair. That's where, it wasn't that long ago, we did new signage just to say, hey, 4 hours free, you don't have to mess with anything, you just park, you go, you enjoy. I will offer, and I appreciate that, because we want to support the greater good and the greater economic engine that downtown is, and we don't want parking to be a detriment. You know, it's a management tool to the residential and commercial activity there, but we do want to be open to not undercutting ourselves through the enforcement efforts there. So I will offer, we have a two-step adjudication process for parking, and once again, the goal is education. And as staff, we have the ability to, you know, if we have a reasonable appeal, change a citation to a warning. And you know, for first-time offenders, you know, if we have someone that's playing games or creating chronic issues, that's another story. So, you know, we're able to resolve a lot of those things, but we can, I'm certainly open to ways we can further streamline, and that's where, as we've already done with on-street, if there's additional, perhaps short-term, because that's something we've heard from the Downtown Business Advisory Group of some interest in, perhaps we could look at some more tactical deployments of some of that, you know, the quick hit sort of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and if I could also jump in on the downtown, talking about, as Eric mentioned, adding some more of those 15-minute spots. I can sit at Bonchon and I can watch all the Uber drivers come in, and some of them will just pull up illegally, which, you know, why don't we just make that a 15-minute loading area, I'm thinking, instead of making, some of them who are rule followers will park in the Olive Garden parking lot for free and walk across. But it seems, you know, there's some key areas where I think we can do some quick pull-ins, 15-minute, 30-minute, quick hits, as Eric said, to help people. And I also think a lot of it is communications. Eric and his team did a great effort re-signing. But you know what I'm hearing, we need to do more, bigger signs, more easily to understand signs, and also a communication strategy to just keep repeating the message. We said 4 for free, so 4 hours for free, but where people are getting confused is, you know, the lot's right here, but then there's an on-street literally right here, if you think about right in front of the JCPenney or the Alamo, and that can be confusing if there's a sign here that says free and one here that says use the app, and, you know, they don't want to download an app. So I think we're getting a lot of really good feedback from this group tonight and from the business community. So we're constantly iterating and improving. So I think we're going to take this guidance and feedback and just continue to improve our downtown parking situation.
Can I just put a plug in for the 15-minute Bonchon side?
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Hott?
Yes, so talking more about parking and the businesses, something that I enjoy when I have an evening out in Denver is between the hours of like 6 p.m. and like, I don't know if it's like 4 a.m., 6 a.m., those hours are free, so that way people who are coming to enjoy the nightlife, which I'm sure as we have more, you know, places, you know, as the downtown fills up, that might be something to look into, so that way people would rather, you know, go spend their evening in the downtown instead of going all the way to Denver. And then this is just a question. What are the rules on campers being parked on lawns? I just see that sometimes, and I just don't know if that's like legal or.
So, Counselor, 2 things. Overnights are technically free in downtown
Oh.
on streets. So,
Okay.
despite what rumors may be, we don't have third shift parking enforcement officers, don't tell anyone. PD is still working, but they're not enforcing parking downtown. So there is that grace, largely it's a 9 to 6, 9 to 7, time period. On the RV, so per city code, whether it's an RV or any vehicle, I mean, per the city's right, it needs to be parked on a camper.
Aren't technically, if it's not like, it's like a pop-up camper,
Sure.
that doesn't have a motor.
Sure. It has to be parked on a solid or rocked surface, so it can't be on grass or turf. It doesn't have to be on concrete or asphalt. It can be on a rocked surface. But for a camper like a pop-up, that's the existing city code, and the property standards team will work with people to, at times, if you have an infraction on grass, you can solve that with some somewhat attractive rock or something like that. But that's the limitation, a hard surface.
Okay. And I do enjoy the 4 hours free. I frequently park and walk away, and I've never had to pay so far. I frequent it a lot because it's so close, and I do enjoy that. That was it for me.
Mr. Dumont, do you have anything?
I do. I would put my support behind looking at a way that people could pay without the app, even if it's like, I've seen, especially like in the Highlands and stuff, where they'll have just like a kiosk that maybe you have to walk to, but still allows you to put your license plate in and pay, and not, whether you don't have your phone, or say you're going down there to get a job and your phone's been shut off, or, there could be a variety of reasons why somebody might not have ability to use an app. So, the other one that I'm more interested in, and I know that I was one who asked to look at the driveways, and specifically residential. And I haven't heard it as much, and I think that when we first started a little bit more parking enforcement, maybe we were, I don't want to use the term overzealous, but it seems like that's when we got complaints. Because if I look at this rule, like, there's no way you could park in front of my house if you wanted to follow that rule, or even 3 feet. Because my truck, or even my kid's car, is gonna be within 5 feet of my neighbor's or my driveway. Like, in Countryside specifically, I mean, it's just the way our streets are. I mean, I have a very narrow front yard, so I think the reason I wanted to bring it up is that something that we could address. But I also think that it seems like some of it's lightened up just by us not going after it just because it's 3 feet or 5 feet. Because we were hearing about it a lot when we very first started getting a little bit more serious about parking enforcement. So I was hoping if you had any recommendations, or if you just think it's more of a, let's make sure that we're, being reasonable and doing all the things that you said, as far as just looking at safety and using, our brain when we look at a particular situation.
Yeah. And those are all accurate points, Counselor. And we have made operational adjustments in direction. We have a wonderful team, very, very committed to the city. But I think there was perhaps maybe an overexuberance of proactive activity on residential streets. The safety issue becomes more on arterial and collectors. So, the 5 feet in the driveway, the cul-de-sac parking, I think we've been able to provide some better operational guidance. And in this journey, I think our officers are honing in on their administrative discretion. So I think we're finding a better balance point.
That's good and helpful. I mean, and really more than anything, I kind of figured that was the case because we hadn't heard as much, but since it came up, I wanted to make sure that we kind of put a knot on it, because we did ask to kind of get back to it. And I think just in the busyness of all the things the city has going on, we hadn't kind of revisited that after we had a couple people come and complain probably about a year ago, I bet. But either way, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work they're doing. I have seen a difference in particular areas. Like the dog park is one that some of that, I mean, we certainly have heard more about the dog park, but not for necessarily the same reasons. I mean, originally when I first started hearing about it was the parking, and I think that when we got serious about not letting people illegally park, I haven't heard nearly as much about that. So
And Counselor, your experience is corroborated with our experience through, you know, I know it's, you're part of town, you know, when we engaged on that and kind of adjusted our enforcement efforts, our signage, our strategies, we as parking management have very few complaints these days from Westminster Hills.
What else do you need from us?
I'm good if you're all good.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Do you need a break?
Can I ask that we read the executive session before we take?
Okay, sure.
Your time to
Do you have
shine.
reason for executive session?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the agenda tonight includes a proposed executive session to discuss a personnel matter, a quarterly check-in for the city manager pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code 113C1 and Colorado Revised Statute 246402 4F1.
I'll go around the room and ask you to state your name and that you want to go into executive session.
Amber Hot, yes. Claire Carmelia, yes.
Christine Ireland, yes.
Dave Demott, yes.
Sarah Normella, yes.
Nancy McNally, yes.
So, Mayor, if I could, if that concludes tonight's agenda for the open portion of the study session. If you want to adjourn for the evening, I think the clerk could then stop the simulcast and begin a separate recording for your executive session.
Okay, it's 10:03 and this meeting is adjourned.